On the day our household was confiscated, the younger sister who had always competed with me for our family's favor risked her life to shove me into a secret passage. She changed into my clothes and set the Marquise manor ablaze. When I opened my eyes again, she was arguing over my cloisonné enamel jewelry. Choking back tears, I said, "If you like it, take it." When the flames burned through the roof beams, Mingzhu gave me a hard shove. I tumbled into the secret passage, striking my knee against the stone steps so painfully that my vision went black. Before I could get up, she had already activated the mechanism beside the wall, slowly closing the heavy stone door. Through the narrowing gap, I saw her wearing my moon-white dress, with the jade hairpin I wore most often tucked into her hair. It was the most recognizable outfit by which the officers would identify the eldest legitimate daughter of the Yongning Marquise household. Mingzhu. I lunged forward and hooked my index finger over the edge of the stone door. Her eyes were red, yet she still raised her chin, just as she always had whenever she fought with me over something. "Stop shouting. Your name is the one written on their list, and you are the one the men outside are looking for. As long as they believe you are still inside the manor, you can escape through the west side of the city." I trembled from head to toe. "Take off those clothes! Come with me!" She looked down at the dress she wore, then suddenly smiled. "Sister, your life is more useful than mine." Before the stone door closed completely, I heard her ignite a tinder stick outside. Thick smoke seeped in through the crack. I rammed my shoulder against the door until it felt as though my bones had shattered, but I could not force it open again. Only later did I learn that my father had secretly stored oilcloth and timber in the western warehouse. Once the fire started, it raged out of control. More than half of the Marquise manor burned to charred ruins. Mingzhu never made it out. Clutching the cloisonné enamel hairpin she had left behind, I hid outside the capital for 3 years. In the end, I died of illness in a ruined hut with a leaking roof. Even as I lay dying, I still remembered what she had said. "Sister, your life is more useful than mine." Yet in all the years I survived, not for a single day did I believe my life was more useful than hers. "Sister, are you listening to me or not?" A clear, impatient voice struck my ears. I opened my eyes with a start. There was no fire and no smoke. Bright spring sunlight poured through the window, and the shadows of wisteria blossoms fell diagonally across the carved latticework. A young girl in an apricot-red short jacket stood before my dressing table, both hands pressed against its surface, her cheeks flushed with anger. She was 16, vivid and alive, with 2 small freshwater pearls from the northeast hanging beside her temples. She was not the unrecognizable body burned by the flames. She was Mingzhu. I stared at her so hard that my throat tightened and I could not speak for a long moment. Uncomfortable beneath my gaze, she frowned and slapped the tabletop again. "Grandmother clearly said that I had a share in that set of cloisonné enamel jewelry. Why is all of it kept in your room?" An open red sandalwood box sat on the dressing table. Inside lay a blue-ground scrolling lotus hairpin, a pair of earrings, and a broad bangle. The set had been left behind by my mother. In my previous life, it had also been the beginning of the complete estrangement between Mingzhu and me. That year, grandmother said the jewelry was too brightly colored. Since I was quiet by nature, she thought wearing it would brighten my appearance, so she gave the whole set to me. When Mingzhu heard, she stormed into my courtyard and demanded the bangle. I refused. We argued from afternoon until dusk, eventually alarming father and Madame Liu. Mingzhu was punished to kneel in the ancestral hall all night. Although I kept the jewelry, from that day forward, she decided that I was the sort of elder sister who pretended to be virtuous, while secretly suppressing her at every turn. But now none of that had happened yet. I lowered my eyes to my hands. The skin was smooth and pale, without the scars left by crashing against the stone door or the thick calluses worn into my palms during my years on the run. I had returned to the age of 17 to the very day Mingzhu came to seize the jewelry. "Why aren't you saying anything?" She watched me warily. "Don't think pretending to cry will make me soften. I am taking that bangle today." I raised a hand to my face and felt a trace of moisture. I truly was crying. Mingzhu seemed startled. Much of her earlier aggression vanished at once. "Why are you crying? I didn't even touch you." I pushed the red sandalwood box toward her. When I spoke, even I could hear the tremor I could not suppress. "Take it?" Mingzhu did not reach for it immediately. She stared at the box, then at me, her surprise gradually turning to suspicion. "What trick are you trying to play?" "There is no trick. Yesterday you said these were things your mother left you, and no one was allowed to touch them." I looked at her living face, yet all I could see was the stone door slowly closing between us. "I understand now." No matter how valuable a possession is, it is still only a possession. As though I had said something completely unreasonable, she took half a step back. Shen Jiwei, are you ill? Unable to help myself, I reached out to touch her face. She immediately dodged like a startled cat. Talk if you want, but keep your hands to yourself. My hand froze in midair before I slowly withdrew it. Of course, at this point, Shen Mingzhu had been fighting with me for more than 10 years. Giving her one set of jewelry would not suddenly make us loving sisters. She would only think I had some hidden motive. Footsteps sounded outside. Madame Liu entered with 2 elderly maids, wearing her usual gentle smile. What is going on? I just heard a maid say that Mingzhu had come to make trouble in her elder sister's room again. Her gaze paused briefly on the wooden box beside Shin Mingzhu's hand. Jiwei, those are things your mother left behind. It is normal for sisters to quarrel occasionally, but you must not make a decision in anger that you will regret later. She had said the same thing in my previous life. On the surface, Madame Liu was urging me to be generous, but in truth, she was reminding me that the jewelry had belonged to my mother, making me even less willing to give it up. Then she would turn and scold Shen Mingzhu for being unreasonable, until my younger sister flew into an embarrassed rage. I looked at her and replied calmly, I am not acting out of anger. I am giving the jewelry to Mingzhu of my own free will. Madame Liu's smile stiffened slightly. Shen Mingzhu immediately lifted her chin. You heard her, sister wants to give it to me. Madame Liu sighed softly. The eldest young lady may be willing now, but she may regret it later. Mingzhu, if you truly take it, and your sister later mentions that it was a keepsake from her mother, do not blame others for saying that you were inconsiderate. Sure enough, Shen Mingzhu's hand stopped. What she feared most was hearing people call her a greedy concubine-born daughter who was unworthy of fine things. That was exactly how Madame Liu had always treated her in my previous life, indulging her whenever she seized something, yet making certain she understood that no matter what she obtained, others could still humiliate her for her birth. I closed the box and placed it directly into Shen Mingzhu's arms. Once I give something away, I will not ask for it back. Everyone in this courtyard can bear witness from now on. Anyone who uses this matter to humiliate you will be questioning my decision. The smile vanished completely from Madame Liu's face. Holding the box, Shen Mingzhu stared at me blankly for a moment before snorting. You said it yourself. She reached the doorway, then abruptly turned back. You truly won't regret it? I looked at her and answered softly, I won't. She pressed her lips together and left with the box in her arms. Only after the flash of apricot red disappeared beyond the courtyard gate did I brace myself against the window ledge and slowly sit down. My personal maid, King Dai, looked at me anxiously. Young lady, those were things the late madam left you. Why did you give all of them to the second young lady? I opened a hidden compartment beneath the window ledge and took out an aged dowry inventory. Because only today did I understand that the jewelry was not the only thing my mother left me. On the final page of the inventory, a small line of writing caught my eye. Liaguang Workshop 30% ownership deed. In my previous life, right up until the Marquis's household was confiscated, I never knew that my mother had owned 30% of the most famous cloisonné enamel workshop in the capital. Not once had I received so much as a single tael in dividends. I was about to continue reading when another visitor arrived. Shenf. My father's steward stood at the entrance and bowed respectfully. Eldest young lady, the Marquis sent me to borrow your private seal. Several estates belonging to the household need to be registered again. He will use it tonight and return it tomorrow morning. In my previous life, I had asked no questions because father said that members of one family should not guard against one another. Later that private seal appeared on loan note. After loan note I had never seen. I closed the dowry inventory and looked up at Shen Fu. I will not lend it. Shen Fu was taken aback. Eldest young lady, the Marquis only wishes to borrow it temporarily. Since father wants to use it, tell him to come and ask for it himself. Less than an hour later, father arrived. Shen Huizhang was slender and dressed in a dark teal robe. Still wearing the gentle, refined appearance I remembered, he sat in the seat of honor, his voice carrying a trace of helpless authority. Today you first gave your mother's keepsakes to Mingzhu, and now you refuse to lend your father your private seal. Have you suffered some grievance in this household? I poured him a cup of tea. I have suffered no grievance. Then give me the seal. Which estates does father intend to register? His hand paused around the teacup. The household owns many properties. Why should an unmarried girl concern herself with such matters? The seal is mine. I should at least know where it will be stamped. Father's brows drew together slightly. I only need to borrow your seal for one night. Do you not even trust your own father? I looked at him. In my previous life, those words had always weighed so heavily on me that I could not raise my head. It was as though asking one more question made me unfilial and proved that I distrusted my own family. But someone truly worthy of trust would not be afraid to let me see the deed. I gently placed the cup in front of him. If father brings me the documents that require my seal, I will decide after reading them. If you refuse to show them to me, I cannot lend you the seal. Father stared at me for a long time. In the end, he did not touch the tea. When he rose, he left only one cold remark behind. Jaffe, lately you seem to understand the rules less and less. I watched him leave without following. Outside the window, the wind stripped half the wisteria blossoms from their vines. I closed my fingers tightly around my private seal. This time I would not entrust my life to the Marquis's household again. Not even my seal. 3 days later, grandmother hosted a small banquet in the flower hall. She claimed that she had invited several familiar madams to admire the blossoms, but in truth she wanted the young ladies of the household to appear before their elders. As expected, Shen Mingzhu wore the cloisonné enamel earrings. Dressed in peach red, with the blue earrings swaying beside her cheeks, she looked as brilliant as the fullest blossom on a spring branch. When she noticed me looking, she deliberately turned her face to the side. What? Regretting it? No. Then why do you keep staring? Because they look beautiful on you. She seemed to choke on her reply, the tips of her ears flushed faintly. I don't need your praise. Halfway through the banquet, one of the visiting madams complimented the delicate earrings. Shen Mingzhu grew pleased with herself. When she stood, she moved too abruptly, and one earring caught on a hanging tassel. A crisp sound rang out. The left earring fell onto the blue brick floor. A hairline crack appeared across its blue enamel surface. The flower hall fell silent. Shen Mingzhu's face turned white. She bent at once to pick it up, but grandmother set down her teacup with a heavy thud. So clumsy. Such a valuable object has been in your hands for only 3 days, and already you could not keep it safe. Shen Mingzhu clutched the damaged earring, her lips pressed tightly together. Madame Liu immediately tried to smooth things over. Mother, please do not be angry. Mingzhu is young, and this is the first time she has worn jewelry so delicate. It was only natural that she might be careless. Then she turned toward me. Jiwei, you are the elder sister. Had you not given her the jewelry, she would not have broken it. Why not apologize to your grandmother and let the matter end here? She had said the same thing in my previous life to keep my younger sister from being punished. I immediately knelt and claimed that I had failed to store the jewelry properly and had insisted that Mingzhu wear it. But outside the ancestral hall, Shen Mingzhu heard servants whispering that the eldest young lady was kind-hearted, while the second young lady only knew how to cause trouble. That very night, she stormed into my room and called me a hypocrite. This time I remained seated. The jewelry already belongs to Mingzhu, Madame Liu continued in a gentle voice. Precisely because you gave it to her, you should have reminded her to cherish it. I did remind her, and she understood. I looked at Shen Mingzhu. You chose to take it out and wear it yourself, did you not? Her expression darkened, but she still nodded. Yes, and you broke it yourself. Yes, so what? Then you will have it repaired yourself. Grandmother's voice was cold. She is an unmarried girl. Where is she supposed to find someone who repairs cloisonné enamel? She can find a craftsman, and what if it cannot be repaired? Then that is the consequence she must bear. Shen Mingzhu jerked her head up, anger already rising in her eyes. Shen Jiwei, you really were waiting to laugh at me. I did not rush to explain as I once would have. If I were waiting to laugh at you, I would not be telling you to have it repaired, nor will I apologize in your place. Once an object enters your hands, it belongs to you. You enjoy the prestige it brings, so you must also bear the consequences if you damage it. Madame Liu frowned. Jiwei, why calculate matters so precisely between sisters? I turned toward her. When Madame Liu handled the matter of the third branch breaking the jade screen bestowed by the palace last month, you said that each branch must take responsibility for its own possessions, and must not shift the blame onto another. Mingzhu's jewelry is neither an imperial object nor mine anymore. Should the same rule not apply? Her expression changed slightly. Grandmother looked at me, her voice even colder. You have become increasingly skilled at using the household rules to silence your elders. I stood and bowed. I simply do not want others to shoulder Mingzhu's responsibilities forever. An elder sister can teach her to take responsibility, but she cannot live Mingzhu's life for her. No one in the flower hall spoke. Shen Mingzhu gripped the cracked earring, a complicated look in her eyes. After the banquet, she stopped me outside my courtyard. Did you already know grandmother would punish me? No. You did this on purpose. You gave me the jewelry so I would humiliate myself. Then give it back to me. She immediately hid both hands behind her back. Dream on. I looked at her. If you will not return it, then have it repaired. I have no money. Her monthly allowance was not small, but she loved pretty things and spent most of it on clothes, rouge, and powder. Then think of another way. Her eyes reddened with anger. Can't you pay for me? I remembered my previous life. After she married into the Feng family, she once asked me through the carriage curtain to lend her 100 taels. I gave it to her later. I gave her 500, then 1,000. Yet the money never truly reached her hands. The Feng family took all of it, again and again. I filled the holes for her, but I never taught her how to protect what belonged to her. I will not pay. I turned and walked outside. She hurried after me. Where are you going? To find someone who can repair the earring. She froze for a moment, then quickly followed. I did not ask you to accompany me. I only happened to want to visit Liuguang Workshop as well. Liuguang Workshop stood in a quiet lane in the southern part of the capital. Its storefront was small, but the interior was clean and orderly. Wooden shelves displayed cloisonné enamel pieces in every color, hairpins, incense boxes, and delicate earrings. A young man in a dark gray robe stood behind the counter, reading an account book. When he raised his head, his gaze first fell on the earring in Shen Mingzhu's hand. You need something repaired? She handed it over. Can you fix it? He carried the earring to the window and examined it carefully. The enamel surface is cracked, but the body beneath it is intact. It can be repaired, though a fine line will remain afterward. Shen Mingzhu frowned. You cannot make it look exactly as it did before? No. Aren't you supposed to be the finest cloisonné enamel workshop in the capital? The young man's tone remained flat. Even the finest craftsman cannot make something that has cracked become something that was never cracked. Shen Mingzhu plainly disliked that answer. How much? 80 taels. She sucked in a breath. Are you robbing me? The old material used for this layer of blue enamel is now difficult to find. Redrawing the pattern, filling the enamel, and firing it again will take at least half a month. He placed the earring on a piece of soft cloth. If you think the price is too high, you need not repair it. Shen Mingzhu looked at me. I stood nearby without speaking. She gritted her teeth. Can I owe you for now? No. I am the second young lady of the Yongning Marquis' household. Your title as the second young lady cannot pay for my materials. Her face flushed bright red with anger. My gaze swept over a stack of design drafts beside the counter. What if she uses a pattern design to offset part of the price? The man looked at me. Does this young lady know how to draw designs for cloisonné enamel? I do not. She does. Shen Mingzhu stared at me. She had loved drawing flowers and birds since childhood. But everyone in the household said that such sketches were merely a pastime for a girl. No one had ever examined her drawings seriously. When did I agree to that? You do not have to agree? I looked at the damaged earring in her hand. Then do not repair it. She held back for a long moment before finally pulling a folded sheet of paper from her sleeve. It was a spring swallow design she had casually sketched in the carriage. The young man studied it. The lines are good for a large changes. It could be made into earrings. Shen Mingzhu's eyes lit up. How much can it offset? 10 taels. Only 10? If the revised design proves usable, another 10. She was about to bargain again when I interrupted. Agreed. Only then did the man look directly at me. You are Shen Jiwei? His gaze paused slightly. Gu Yanci? My heart gave a faint jolt. In my previous life, Liuguang Workshop abruptly closed half a year before the Marquis's household was confiscated. I later heard that the young master of the Gu family had taken the craftsman south, so this was him. Gu Yanci picked up the undamaged earring and turned it over. This set belonged to your mother. How do you know? He pointed to a tiny golden mark on the underside. This is the old seal Liuguang Workshop used 16 years ago. Few objects made then could use this shade of blue enamel. He returned the earring to its box. Miss Shen, did you know that your mother once held a 30% ownership deed in Liuguang Workshop? Shen Mingzhu whipped her head toward me. I gripped my sleeve, slowly tightening my fingers. I know, but I learned of it only today. After we returned to the manor, I spent the night searching through every page of the dowry inventory my mother had left behind. The inventory contained 27 pages. Farmland, shop fronts, jewelry, and furniture were all listed clearly, item by item. In the corner of the final page, the 30% ownership deed in Liuguang Workshop was indeed recorded. Yet in all the household accounts from those years, not a single dividend from Liuguang Workshop appeared. Early the next morning, I sent King Dai to invite Uncle Joe, the old manager who had served my mother while she was alive. Uncle Joe was already in his 50s the instant he saw the dowry inventory. His eyes reddened. The late madam truly did invest 3,000 taels in Liguang workshop. After she passed away, someone from the Marquez's household came and said the eldest young lady was still young, so the ownership deed would temporarily be managed by the household. Did the workshop send any dividends over the years? It did. In the first few years later, the household changed the person responsible for receiving the accounts, and I no longer knew what happened. Who took over? Uncle Zhou lowered his voice. Granny Ma, who serves Madame Liu. I did not immediately confront Madame Liu. Instead, I asked Uncle Zhou to make a copy of the old accounts he had kept. I also sent King Dai to the government office that archived women's private property deeds to ask how I could register a new private seal. That afternoon, I took the dowry inventory to the household accounting room. After searching for half the day, the accountant produced only 2 scattered account books. Eldest young lady, the late madam's accounts are many years old. Much of the material has already been damaged. Where were the dividends from Liguang workshop recorded? Sweat appeared on his forehead. I do not know. How much income did the 2 jewelry shops under my mother's name produce each year? Business has not been very good in recent years. How much, exactly? He stammered and could not answer. I ordered King Dai to carry every account book still present back to my courtyard, then told Uncle Zhou to visit the 2 shops and reconcile their accounts separately. By evening, the accounting room suddenly sent word that 2 other old account books could not be found. In my previous life, I would only have assumed that the household staff were disorganized. Now I understood that the more insistently someone claimed an object could not be found, the more likely it was being deliberately hidden. I said nothing that night. 3 soft taps of pebbles sounded outside my window. King Dai pushed it open, and Shen Mingzhu's head appeared beside the wall. Send everyone out. I signaled for the maids to withdraw. She climbed in through the window with a brass key in her hand. You are looking for account books, aren't you? How did you know? Granny Ma from Madame Liu's courtyard carried a wooden box into the eastern side room this afternoon. I happened to pass by. She tossed the key onto the table. 3rd cabinet in the eastern side room. I looked at her. Why are you helping me? She turned her face away. I am not helping you, they said. The jewelry set belonged to your mother. If someone truly stole your mother's money, then by taking the jewelry, wouldn't I also be taking advantage of you? I simply do not want to owe you anything. I picked up the key. Will you come with me? She hesitated. I am only showing you the way. The eastern side room belonged to the old courtyard where my mother had once lived. After her death, father said the place brought back painful memories and left it empty. Madame Liu occasionally had unused items piled there. We avoided the women making their night patrol and entered through a side door. Sure enough, a lock hung on the 3rd cabinet. The key made a faint sound as it turned. When the cabinet opened, it revealed 2 account books and a wooden box covered in dust. I opened the accounts first. They clearly recorded that during the previous 5 years, the 2 shops and 3 estates under my mother's name had paid nearly 20,000 taels into the household's common funds. Every withdrawal was marked as a temporary loan, yet not a single loan note existed. Standing beside me, Shen Mingzhu's expression grew uglier with every page. Where did all this money go? Hosting banquets, renovating the gardens, buying antique paintings for father, and paying our elder brother's gambling debts. Why didn't I know? There are many things you do not know, she glared at me. You didn't know either. I did not argue. In my previous life I truly knew nothing. I believed I possessed an enormous dowry, yet I had never even learned where the money came from or where it went. Several old sheets of paper lay inside the wooden box. One of them was the original site plan from when the Marquise Manor was built. Shen Mingzhu unfolded it and pointed to a thin line on the western side. What is this? My heart tightened. The line ran from the rear wall of the eastern side room, all the way beyond the western warehouse. 4 small characters were written beside it. Freight passage. A hidden passage in my previous life. Shen Mingzhu had used this very route to send me out, so she had not discovered it by accident. She had likely seen this site plan while sorting through old objects before the household's downfall. I stared at the passage marked on the paper, my fingers trembling slightly. Sister, Shen Mingzhu leaned closer. What is wrong? Nothing. I folded the site plan and slipped it into my sleeve. She studied me suspiciously. Can that hidden passage still be used? I do not know. We can inspect it another day. I suddenly seized her wrist. You are not allowed to go alone. She jumped at my intensity. I was only saying it casually. I released her. The passage has not been used for years and may have collapsed. If you want to see it, you must go with me. Rubbing her wrist, she muttered, as though I care that much. Back in my courtyard, I copied the accounts 3 times. I kept 1 copy, gave another to Uncle Zhou, and personally delivered the last to the government office for safekeeping. At the same time, I registered the new design of my private seal and formally declared the old one invalid from that day onward. Once everything was done, I went to see Madame Liu. She sat drinking tea in the warm chamber. When she saw me carrying the account books, her expression barely changed. "Jiwei, why are you still checking accounts at this hour?" "I found 2 of my mother's old account books." Her hand paused around the cup. "Where's?" "In the eastern side room. A servant must have placed them there by mistake." She smiled gently. "Those accounts are many years old. They are not worth so much effort." I opened one of the books. Over the past 5 years, the household withdrew 19,600 taels from my mother's shops. Every entry here calls it a temporary loan. "Where are the loan notes?" She remained silent for a moment. "Jiwei, why must members of one family calculate money so precisely? Without a precise accounting, no one knows who borrowed and who repaid. The Marquis' household has supported you for many years. Is that not worth this amount of silver? The income from my mother's dowry and father's duty to raise his child are not the same matter." At last, her gaze turned cold. "You are acting more and more like a merchant. That is still better than not knowing who has taken my own property." I closed the account book. From today onward, the income from the shops and estates under my mother's name will no longer enter the household's common funds. No one may make a withdrawal without my handwritten authorization. Madame Liu stared at me. "The Marquis will not agree. These properties are not registered under the Marquis's household. Whether father agrees changes nothing." As I left, I heard the heavy sound of her teacup striking the table. The next day, Uncle Zhou brought detailed statements from the 2 shops. When I turned to the last page, Mingzhu happened to enter. She saw the figures on the table and curled her lip. "Your mother's shops are worth more than I expected. During the past 5 years, the household took nearly 20,000 taels from them." The smile disappeared from her face. 20,000? Grandmother said just the year before last that the household was short of money, so my birthday celebration had to be kept simple. I looked at her. The Marquis' household was never poor. The money simply never truly belonged to us. She was silent for a long time before suddenly asking, "Then why does father still want to marry me into the Feng family?" I raised my eyes. "What Feng family?" She bit her lip. Madame Liu said, "Father has found an excellent marriage for me. The Feng family is wealthy and has offered a large bride price," she said. "I would certainly live better than you in the future." Feng Xiaorong was 17 years older than Mingzhu. His wife had died 3 years earlier, leaving him with an 8-year-old daughter. He operated several of the largest silk shops in the capital and possessed a substantial fortune. For a marquis's daughter born to a concubine, the money and display alone did make it appear to be a good marriage. In my previous life, Mingzhu had been delighted for an entire month after hearing that the Feng family would offer 20,000 taels as the bride price. She deliberately told me that there was nothing admirable about marrying into a prestigious scholarly family when they might not even be able to afford a decent jewelry set. Later, after she married into the Feng family, Feng Xiaorong took her dowry to cover losses in his businesses. When she wanted to return to the Marquis' household for help, grandmother said that a married daughter must put her husband's family first. I secretly sent her silver, but she only accused me of coming to laugh at her. It was not until the day our household was confiscated that I learned she had never truly hated me. Now she stood in front of the mirror choosing clothes. "Which do you think is better, this black outfit or the pomegranate red one? Where are you going?" "To the Feng family's silk shop." She deliberately raised her chin. Master Feng said I should personally choose the fabric for my wedding clothes. I set down the account book. "I will go with you." She immediately became wary. "What are you planning?" "I want to see my future brother-in-law." "Who says he is your brother-in-law?" Despite her words, she could not hide the pride in her eyes. When our carriage reached the Feng family's silk shop, Feng Xiaorong personally came outside to welcome us. He was slightly heavyset with a neatly trimmed short beard, dressed in a sapphire blue brocade robe. He smiled with an affable air. "The second young lady is even more radiant than the rumors say." Mingzhu's cheeks flushed faintly, then he looked at me. "And this must be the eldest young lady. I have long heard that you are dignified and virtuous. Meeting you today, I see your reputation is well deserved." I nodded without saying much. Feng Xiaorong ordered the manager to bring out more than a dozen bolts of the finest silk. Mingzhu selected among them with great enthusiasm. A little girl of 7 or 8 hid beside the doorway, watching us timidly. Her clothes had been washed until they were faded, and the sleeves were clearly too short. Mingzhu asked, "Who is that?" The smile on Feng Xiaorong's face dimmed. My late wife's daughter, she is withdrawn. There is no need to pay attention to her. Hearing this, the little girl lowered her head and stepped backward. A female worker happened to approach from behind, carrying several bolts of cloth. They collided, and the fabric rolled across the floor. Feng Xiaorong's expression changed at once. Are you blind? The worker immediately dropped to her knees. Please forgive me, sir. I did not see the young lady. He raised his hand and struck her across the face. The sharp sound made Mingzhu drop the cloth she was holding back onto the table. As though only then remembering that we were present, Feng Xiaorong recovered his smile. Workers will not learn unless they are disciplined. I apologize for the unpleasant sight. I looked at the worker. She covered her cheek and did not dare make a sound. She only knocked over a few bolts of cloth. They can simply be rolled up again. Why was there any need to strike her? Feng Xiaorong laughed. The eldest young lady is kind-hearted and does not understand the rules of business. Women are easily careless in their work. Unless one is strict, they will not obey. I glanced at Mingzhu. The delight she had shown moments earlier had already faded. Feng Xiaorong ordered someone to bring out another bolt of red silk embroidered with gold thread. This one suits the second young lady best. After you marry into the Feng family, you need only enjoy a comfortable life at home. I will naturally manage the businesses and money. Mingzhu asked, what about my dowry? Husband and wife are one. Naturally, the Feng family will manage that as well. What if I want to manage it myself? As though she had said something childish, he laughed. Before marriage, a girl may occasionally learn to read accounts for amusement after marriage. What matters most is assisting her husband and raising children. Mingzhu pressed her lips together. Feng Xiaorong turned to me and suddenly smiled with deeper meaning. Come to think of it, the eldest young lady is also of marriageable age. If you do not object, the two sisters could enter the Feng family together. It would make the bond between our households even closer. Mingzhu can be my wife and the eldest young lady. He paused deliberately. You could become a second wife of equal rank. Mingzhu shot to her feet. What nonsense are you saying? Feng Xiaorong remained unruffled. Second young lady, do not be angry. I speak only out of goodwill. The Marquis's household is currently short of money. If both young ladies marry into the Feng family, you can look after one another and the household will receive an even greater bride price. I looked at him. One young lady's dowry is not enough for you, Master Feng? You want to smile, stiffened. The eldest young lady's words are rather unpleasant. You were the one who first described marriage as a business transaction. I turned to Mingzhu. Have you seen enough? Her face was pale. She nodded. Let's go. Behind us, Feng Xiaorong said coldly. Second young lady, a woman's marriage is decided by her parents. You may leave today, but you will still have to return another day. Mingzhu's steps faltered. I did not stop her. She turned around on her own. Even if I return, it will not be because of you. After leaving the silk shop, she did not speak the entire way. Only when we reached the street corner did she ask in a low voice, did you already know he was that sort of man? I had heard some things. Then why didn't you simply tell me he was bad? Would you have believed me? She fell silent. No. She would only have thought I was jealous of her. The sound of wheels came from ahead. Gu Yanci walked toward us from beside a carriage loaded with cloisonné enamel goods. He saw us, then noticed a clerk from the Feng shop hurrying after him. What happened? The Feng manager arrived out of breath. Proprietor Gu, our master says he will not accept today's shipment. Gu Yanci's expression remained calm. Why? Our master is in a poor mood. It is only a delay of a few days, though the delivery agreement has already been signed. Why must proprietor be so exacting? Gu Yanci took a contract from his sleeve. For every day the delivery is delayed, the Feng family owes 30 taels in compensation. The manager's expression darkened. They are only a few boxes of trinkets. You truly dare demand compensation from the Feng family? If the contract states it, then it must be followed. Feng Xiang came out of the shop. Gu Yanci, are you turning against me for the sake of two young ladies from the Marquis's household? Gu Yanci glanced at him. I am ending a business relationship with a client who refuses to honor a contract. This has nothing to do with the Tushin sisters. Today you can reject my goods because you are in a poor mood. Tomorrow you may delay payment for some other reason. Liaguang Workshop does not do business with customers like that. He ordered his workers to turn the carriage around. He did not speak on our behalf or use the opportunity to impress us. He simply followed his own principles and walked away from the transaction without hesitation. Watching his retreating back, Mingzhu asked softly, isn't he afraid of offending the Feng family? He is. Then why did he still do it? Because some things are more important than a single piece of business. She said no more. When we returned to the manor, Madame Li was already waiting in Mingzhu's courtyard. I stood under the eaves and listened as she gently tried to persuade Mingzhu inside. Master Feng is a businessman. It is natural for him to be stern. What man is not like that outside his home? Your sister took you to witness those things only because she fears you will marry better than she does. Gu Yanci is merely a merchant who runs a jewelry workshop. How could he compare with the wealth of the Feng family? Shen Mingzhu did not immediately argue. After a long while she asked, Madame Liu, if the Feng family is truly so good, why does Master Feng's own daughter dress worse than even a low-ranking maid in my courtyard? The room went silent for a moment. I did not enter. Some answers could only be found if Shen Mingzhu asked the questions herself. The old accounts of Liguang workshop were worse than I expected. After my mother died, the Marquis's household continued taking dividends but invested no more money. Members of Gu Yanci's clan repeatedly withdrew operating funds as well. Now the workshop had only just over a dozen veteran craftsmen left, and 2 of its kilns needed repair. Gu Yanci placed every account book before me. If you only want to recover the dividends from past years, I can repay you in installments. If you want to retain your shares, you must also bear the losses with us. After reading all the accounts, I said, I will keep the shares. Why? Liguang Workshop's craft still survives. As long as the craftsmen remain, the workshop has not truly collapsed. He studied me for a moment. Mission is more willing to take risks than I expected. I simply know that if I refuse to take any risk, the Marquis's household will continue taking whatever silver is readily available. We decided to begin with a line of small ornaments suited to young women. The price would not be too high, and the designs had to be light and delicate. I would ask the ladies of the capital about their preferences. Gu Yanci would oversee the craft and costs. Shen Mingzhu was still revising the design for her earrings. Gu Yanci rejected 3 versions in succession. The swallow's tail is too thin and will easily break during firing. There are too many petals, so the enamel colors will blur together. This draft can work, but half the leaves must be removed. She slapped her brush onto the table in anger. Can't you say one pleasant thing? Gu Yanci replied. When you do something well, I will naturally praise you. My sister cannot draw either. Why don't you criticize her? She has not drawn anything. Shen Mingzhu was left speechless. Holding back a laugh, I pushed a fresh sheet of paper toward her. Revise it again. She glared at me. You two really are on the same side. Despite her complaints, she picked up the brush again. Half a month later, the designs for the first new collection were finalized. 2 of them used Shen Mingzhu's flower and bird patterns. She was so pleased that she spent the entire day circling the workshop. It was then that Madame Liu approached her. That day I went to the shop to reconcile accounts. When I returned, I noticed that several design drafts on my table had been disturbed. Their corners were positioned differently from when I left. I asked Qingdai, who came here today? The second young lady. She said she was looking for you, sat for a while, and then left. I sent someone to find Shen Mingzhu, but she was no longer in the manor. She did not return until dusk and she looked clearly flustered. I spread the design drafts across the table. What did you take? I took nothing. I will ask only once. She bit her lip. Only a few drawings. Where did you send them? To the Feng family. I closed my eyes briefly. Why? Madame Liu said the Feng family owns a jewelry shop. As long as I gave them the new designs, they would make jewelry according to my drawings. Then everyone would know that I am no worse than you. I looked at her. So you stole the designs for products the workshop has not yet released. What do you mean, stole? Some of those drawings contain patterns I created. Your patterns appear in only 2 designs. The craftsman repeatedly revised all the others, and the firing methods are the work of everyone in the workshop. Giving them to the Feng family without permission is theft. Her face flushed bright red. You simply do not want me to stand out. You could give me the jewelry. So why can't you give me a few drawings? I answered her one word at a time. The jewelry belonged to me, so I could give it away. The designs contain the work of other people. I cannot give away their labor on their behalf. Tears welled in her eyes. You really do still look down on me. I do not. You do. Everyone says you are intelligent and steady, and that you know how to read accounts. I only took a few drawings, yet you treat me like a thief. She turned to leave. I did not stop her. Tomorrow you will go to the workshop and explain what happened in front of all the craftsmen. She whipped around. I won't go. Then I will tell father, and I will also tell the Feng family, that the designs came from an improper source. She trembled with anger. Shen Jue, do you have to drive me to my death? My heart felt as though a needle had pierced it. In my previous life she truly had died in the end. But that was precisely why I could no longer indulge her or let her go any farther down the wrong path. I am not driving you to your death. I want you to live and see things clearly. The next morning, Shen Mingzhu did not come to the workshop. Only in the afternoon did footsteps finally sound outside. She had changed out of her usual ornate clothes and wore only a plain short jacket. Standing before the gathered craftsmen, her face was deathly pale. I took the designs. I thought they were only a few sheets of paper. I will compensate everyone for the loss I caused. An elderly craftsman spoke sternly. Does the second young lady know how many times a single design must be revised? Do you know how many firings one piece of cloisonné enamel jewelry requires? If the Feng family releases the same items first, months of our labor will be wasted. Mingzhu lowered her head. I did not know, but I will learn. At that moment, someone rushed in from outside. Proprietor Gu, the Feng family's jewelry shop has released a new collection. We hurried to the street. A row of new ornaments had been displayed outside the Feng family's jewelry shop. Their designs were almost identical to ours, but the colors were muddy, and the edges of the patterns had blurred into shapeless clumps. A customer picked up an earring and touched it lightly. The enamel surface immediately cracked. The surrounding crowd burst into laughter. The Feng manager's face turned ashen, and he hurriedly ordered the clerks to remove everything from the shelves. Standing outside the crowd, Gu Yanci said quietly, they had the drawings but not the enamel ratios or the firing process. They could steal the form but not the skill. Mingzhu stared at the inferior pieces, her face alternating between red and white. After we returned to the workshop, she voluntarily sat at the last table. How much was the loss? Gu Yanci instructed the accountant to calculate it, redrawing the patterns, delaying the new collection, and the craftsman's wages 180 taels in total. She sucked in a breath. I do not have that much. You may repay it from your monthly allowance, or you may work in the workshop until the debt is cleared. She looked at me. I did not speak for her. After a long silence, she picked up a fine outlining brush. Then I will work. That night, I remained at the workshop to revise the partnership agreement. Gu Yanci's placed 2 documents before me. The first was my mother's original ownership deed. The second was a newly drafted partnership contract. It clearly stated that I held 30% of the shares, that I would participate in decisions concerning product direction and shop operations, and that neither party could use the workshop's assets to pay family debts without authorization. I looked up. Aren't you afraid I will use the Marquis's household to seize control? If you truly wanted to seize control, you would not insist that every account be open. If a partnership can survive only by constantly guarding against the other party, it will fall apart sooner or later. He pushed the ink pad toward me. Looking at the clear allocation of rights and responsibilities in the contract, I suddenly remembered Father's words. Why must members of one family calculate everything so precisely? Someone truly open and honest had the least reason to fear precise accounting. I pressed my private seal onto the contract. I had only just put the documents away when Shenfu, my father's steward, hurried into the workshop. Eldest young lady, the Marquis asks you to return to the manor immediately. The household has arranged a 30,000 tael loan, and the only thing missing is your seal. Father waited for me in his study. A loan note had already been drafted and placed on the desk. When I entered, he gestured toward the chair beside him. Sit. I remained standing. What does father need 30,000 taels for? Repairs to the ancestral residence. It was repaired only the year before last. His expression darkened slightly. The affairs of a household are complicated. You do not understand. Since I do not understand, that is even more reason I cannot stamp it. Only one estate from your mother's dowry will be pledged as collateral. Once our cash flow recovers in half a year, it will naturally be redeemed. In my previous life, I stamped this very loan note. 6 months later, the estate was not redeemed. Father then said that unless we pledged another 2 shops, even the first estate would be lost. I yielded again and again until almost every property my mother had left me became security for the debts of the Marquis's household. I refuse. Father jerked his head up. What did you say? A debt borrowed by the Marquis's household should be secured with property belonging to the Marquis's household. Why is only my name written here? You are the eldest legitimate daughter. Should you not help your family through its difficulties? Father still owns farmland and estates. Those cannot be touched. Elder brother also owns shops. He will inherit the title in the future. So my possessions may be touched instead? Father slammed his palm onto the desk. Shenjiwei, you have enjoyed the wealth of the Marquis's household for 17 years. Now the household is only temporarily short of silver, yet you evade responsibility at every turn. I looked at him. In 5 years, the shops under mother's name paid nearly 20,000 taels into the household. Father called every withdrawal a temporary loan, yet none has been repaid. Now you want another 30,000. I would like to know when it will finally be enough. His face darkened completely. Grandmother's voice sounded from outside. Send her to kneel in the ancestral hall. An elderly maid supported grandmother as she entered, with Madame Liu following behind. For the Marquis' household to raise a daughter who recognizes only money and not family affection is truly a disgrace to our lineage. I bowed to her. If grandmother believes this is a debt of the entire household, father may write down the purpose of the loan, its source of repayment, and every property used as collateral. After I read it, I will decide whether to bear my own share. What do you mean, your share? Grandmother demanded angrily. The entire Marquis' household is one. How can there be any distinction between yours and mine? I raised my eyes. If there is no distinction, why does the loan note bear only my name? The study fell silent. Madame Liu spoke gently. Jiwei, the Marquis is doing this because he cares for you. That is why he is willing to let you participate in important household matters early. Once you marry, the prosperity or decline of the Marquis' household will also affect your standing. Then that is even more reason I should be allowed to see these accounts clearly. She had no answer. Grandmother pointed toward the door. Go kneel in the ancestral hall. You may rise when you agree to stamp the document. I remained where I stood. I will not kneel. Grandmother shook with rage. You dare defy your elders? Refusing to secure a debt whose purpose I do not know is not defiance. The accounts can clearly show how much I have benefited from the Marquis' household. They should also clearly show who incurred its debts. Father sneered. Do you think that because you transferred your dowry away, the Marquis' household can do nothing to you? I am your father with a single written declaration. I can have you expelled from the clan. I took a document bearing the seal of the government office from my sleeve. Mother's dowry has already been registered again under my personal name. Even if I am expelled from the clan, it will not enter the household's common property. Father's expression changed. When did you do this? After father first came to borrow my private seal, he stared at me as though truly seeing his daughter for the first time. You were guarding against me. I was protecting what belongs to me. Get out. I turned and left. As I passed the folding screen, I faintly saw the corner of an apricot-colored skirt behind it. I did not stop that night. Shu knocked on my door. Her face was pale and her eyes were red. I was behind the screen in the study. I heard father say, her voice trembled. He said that since you refused to provide the money, he would move my marriage forward. The Feng family is willing to add another 20,000 taels to the bride price. I poured her a cup of hot tea. She did not take it. So father did not choose the Feng family because he loves me? Perhaps he does love you. But when the Marquis' household lacks silver, he loves the household more. She bit her lower lip. What about grandmother? Grandmother cares most about the title. Madame Liu cares most about control of the household. Then what am I at last? She asked the question. I did not answer immediately. I had once asked myself the same thing. In father's eyes, I was the eldest legitimate daughter who could shoulder debts. In grandmother's eyes, I was a tool for preserving the dignity of the Marquis's household. Mingzhu was the concubine-born daughter who could be exchanged for a high bride price. But no one should be defined only by other people. You are Mingzhu, you are not a bride price, and you are not someone meant only to be compared with me. She stared at me. If I refuse to marry into the Feng family, will the Marquis' household truly collapse? Perhaps. Will father hate me? Possibly. Will grandmother call me unfilial? She will. Her tears finally fell. Then what am I supposed to do? I placed a handkerchief beside her. First, learn to live by relying on yourself. She wiped away her tears and sniffed. Will you teach me? Yes, but I will not clean up every disaster for you. You made a mistake at the workshop, so you must continue compensating for it. And you must personally refuse the marriage. She glared at me. Can't you say one thing that will make me feel safe? I can. What? As long as you do not use your life to repay a debt, I will not abandon you. She lowered her head. After a long time she whispered, who would use her life to repay a debt? My fingers clenched abruptly. She would in my previous life, she had. That was precisely why I could never let her reach that point again. After Mingzhu officially began working at Liuguang workshop, the first thing she did was offend every craftsman there. An elderly craftsman told her to begin by learning how to outline patterns. In less than an hour she complained that the table was too old and the pigments smelled unpleasant, then ordered a junior worker to grind the ink for her. The worker did not move. She slapped the table angrily. Do you know who I am? Without even raising his head, the elderly craftsman said, once you enter the workshop, everyone here is simply a worker. If you cannot draw a proper line, even a young lady from a Marquis' household will not earn wages. Mingzhu immediately tried to leave and return to the manor. I stood at the doorway without stopping her. After taking 2 steps, she saw the notice on the wall, recording the 180 taels she owed the workshop. In the end, she gritted her teeth, went back to her seat and picked up the inkstick. It is only grinding ink, I can do it myself. Her first design was a pair of pomegranate blossom earrings. The colors were vivid, the petals elaborate, and she wanted 3 seed pearls set into each hanging ornament. After Gu Yanci examined the drawing, he said, "Too heavy. What part is heavy?" After an hour, the wearer's earlobes will hurt. She refused to accept it. The full jewelry sets worn by girls from noble households are much heavier than this. This collection of earrings will be priced below 10 taels. The women who buy them may not have maids to arrange their hair and makeup, and they may want to wear them for more than a single banquet. Mingzhu snorted. You simply looked down on my designs. I did not defend her. When the first batch of earrings came out of the kiln, they sold poorly, exactly as Gu Yanci had predicted. Some women tried them on and complained that they were too heavy. Others felt the colors were too bright for everyday wear. Standing in the back room of the shop, Mingzhu stared at the box full of unsold earrings, her expression growing worse and worse. Smash them! She reached out to sweep them onto the floor, but I caught her wrist. Will smashing them solve the problem? Keeping them is humiliating. The materials and wages have already been paid. If you destroy them, you will only create another loss. Moisture rose in her eyes. Then what am I supposed to do? Go and see what customers truly need. I took her to cloth shops and rouge stores in the western part of the city. The customers there were young women from ordinary households. They could not afford jewelry worth dozens or hundreds of taels, but they were willing to spend 1 or 2 taels on a small, finely made ornament. An embroiderer picked up one of the earrings from the counter and clearly liked it, yet finally put it back. Mingzhu could not help asking, "Why aren't you buying it?" The embroiderer smiled. "It is too heavy. I lower my head to embroider all day, so my ears would hurt after wearing it for long. If the lower pendants could be removed, it would be much more convenient." Mingzhu froze. Back at the workshop, she revised the design through the night. She separated the 3 layers hanging beneath the pomegranate blossom, leaving only the lightest one. The remaining parts became small detachable pendants that could be hung separately from hairpins or bracelets. The batch that had previously failed to sell was completely sold out within 7 days. The accountant placed her 12-tael share of the profits before her. She stared at the silver for a long time. "This is mine? It is what remains for you after deducting the cost of materials and labor." She lifted the silver in both hands, her eyes astonishingly bright. I expected her to spend it on clothes immediately. Instead, the next day she handed the money back to the accountant. "Use it to repay the loss I caused first." The accountant laughed. "Second, young lady, you still owe 168 taels. Her face fell. "Couldn't you let me be happy for a moment?" Laughter spread through the workshop. This time, she did not lose her temper. That afternoon, she placed one of the improved pendants on my desk. "For you, I examined it." "Why?" "It comes from my own design and my own share of the profit. I did not seize it from you." After saying that, I called after her, "Mingzhu." "What?" "It is beautiful." With her back still to me, her shoulders visibly tightened. "Of course it is. Look who designed it." After that day, she spent more and more time at the workshop. She still complained and argued with people, but she no longer tried to intimidate them with her identity as a young lady from the Marquis's household. Madame Liu spread rumors inside the manor, claiming that I deliberately forced my younger sister to show herself in public in order to ruin her reputation. For the first time, when Mingzhu heard the rumors, she did not come to question me. She only asked the accountant, "How much can I earn this month?" The accountant replied, "If the new collection sells well, perhaps 30 taels." She nodded. "That is worth more than the gold hairpin grandmother gave me." I had recently been busy reorganizing the storefront and workshop, and often lost track of time while checking accounts. One night, everyone else had left, yet I remained reviewing the prices of raw materials. Gu Yanci returned from the kiln room and saw the food on the table, already completely cold. "You have not eaten." After I finished this page, he reached over and closed the account book. I looked up at him. "Does Proprietor Gu now intend to control when I eat as well?" "I do not." He held the account book beneath his palm. "I am giving you 2 choices. Eat first or I will postpone all the remaining accounts until tomorrow." "Is there a difference?" "With the first choice, you may continue after eating. With the second, I will take the account books away." I could not help laughing. So Proprietor Gu knows how to threaten people after all. This is advice beyond the terms of our contract. Only 2 bowls of noodle soup remained in the small kitchen. Behind the workshop, we sat beside the stone table, the night wind carrying the residual warmth from the kilns. Gu Yanci ate quietly. I asked, Why are you so determined to preserve Liguang workshop? It is the only thing my mother left me. Does the Gu clan not support you? They believe it is beneath the dignity of a son of a prominent clan to manage a workshop, yet they are perfectly willing to use the workshop's silver to repay the clan's debts. His tone remained calm, but his eyes turned cold for an instant. I suddenly understood why he valued contracts so deeply. Both of us had been ordered by those closest to us to surrender our own possessions in the name of family. What if the Gu family forces you to sell the workshop one day? That day will not come. Why? Because I have already taken back the seal that determines whether the workshop lives or dies. I looked at him and smiled softly. What a coincidence, so have I. Urgent footsteps suddenly sounded outside the courtyard. A clerk rushed in. Eldest young lady. People from the Marquis' household took the second young lady away. The Feng family has arrived with the betrothal gifts. The Marquis says the wedding date must be fixed within 3 days. The main hall of the Marquis' manor was brightly lit. Chests of betrothal gifts from the Feng family stretched from the doorway to the corridor. Grandmother, father, Madame Liu, and several elders of the clan were all present. Shen Mingzhu sat in a lower seat, her face pale. When I entered, father said coldly, "This has nothing to do with you." I walked to Shen Mingzhu's side. "She is my younger sister. Naturally, her marriage concerns me," grandmother said. "Precisely because you are her elder sister, you should stop inciting her. The Feng family is willing to offer 30,000 tuls as the bride price, and has even agreed not to hold her working in public at the workshop against hers." Sitting opposite us, Feng Xiaorong added with a smile, "I sincerely wish to marry the second young lady. Once she enters my household, she need only devote herself to her husband and children. I can overlook everything she did before." Shen Mingzhu raised her head. "What have I done that requires your forgiveness?" Feng Xiaorong's smile faded slightly. "For a woman to work in a workshop is ultimately unbecoming. Once you marry into the Feng family, you must not go there again. What about the profit I earn from designing jewelry? Husband and wife are one. Naturally, it will be managed collectively by the family. Why should my own silver go to you? Because I will be your husband." Shen Mingzhu gripped the fabric of her skirt tightly. Father said in a deep voice, "Mingzhu, stop making trouble. The Feng family has already shown the Marquis' household ample respect. If you continue acting willfully, you will be unfilial." Everyone looked at me. They were waiting for me to speak for Shen Mingzhu. If I said the marriage could not proceed, they could blame me for sowing discord and destroying her engagement. I did not. I merely turned to her. "Mingzhu, this is your marriage. The choice of whether to marry him is yours." Panic flashed through her eyes. "If I refuse, father will be angry." "He will. Grandmother will scold me." "She will. The household may lose the bride price." "Yes." Her voice trembled. "Then why won't you speak for me?" "Because I cannot live your entire life for you. If you marry, you must bear the consequences that follow. If you refuse, you must also bear the consequences of rejecting the marriage. No matter what happens, the words today must come from your own mouth." The hall was so quiet that the faint crackle of the candle flames could be heard. Shen Mingzhu slowly stood. She first looked at father, then at grandmother. Finally, she removed the gold hairpin from her hair. Grandmother had given it to her the previous year. Grandmother said this hairpin proved that you loved me most. Madame Liu said that the Feng family's willingness to offer such a high bride price proved that father valued me. But every time you give me something, you demand that I repay you with even more. The hairpin requires obedience. The bride price requires me to surrender my dowry. This so-called affection even requires me to marry a man who does not treat his own daughter kindly. She placed the gold hairpin on the table. "I do not want affection like this anymore." Father sprang to his feet. "How dare you?" Shen Mingzhu's shoulders shook, but she did not sit down. "I will not marry him." Feng Xiaorong's face darkened completely. "Second young lady, have you thought this through? If you refuse me today, you may never find a marriage better than the Feng family again. Then I would rather never marry." Grandmother clutched her chest. "Rebellion, every one of you has rebelled." As the hall descended into chaos, another servant announced from outside, "Young Master Su has arrived." My fiancé, Su Jingchuan, entered the main hall. Dressed in a moon-white robe, he remained as gentle and refined as I remembered. In my previous life after marrying him, I believed I had finally escaped the Marquis' household. Only later did I discover that he was no different from father. He likewise believed that his wife's dowry should be used to support the Su family. He was simply more skilled than father at making his demands sound gentle. "Jiwei." He walked up to me and spoke softly. "I heard that you have recently been visiting a workshop and even clashed with the Marquis' household. A woman who manages a shop will inevitably attract gossip. Now Mingzhu has publicly rejected a marriage as well. As her elder sister, you should advise her. I looked at him. Did you come to persuade her on behalf of the Feng family? I came because I am thinking of you. If you stop managing the workshop, return your dowry to the Marquis's household, and distance yourself from Mingzhu, our marriage may continue as planned. He spoke as though offering me a kindness, as though he would forgive my rebellion, if only I returned to being obedient. Xu Jingchuan, do you truly want to marry me, or do you want my dowry and my position as the eldest legitimate daughter of a Marquis's household? His expression changed slightly. Why must husband and wife speak so bluntly about money and self-interest? The same words again. Father said members of one family should not calculate too precisely. Madame Liu said sisters should not haggle with one another. Su Jingchuan said husband and wife should not discuss interests, yet every one of them calculated those interests more carefully than anyone. I took the marriage agreement from my sleeve. Since you are unwilling to speak clearly, this marriage ends here. He stared at me. You want to break the engagement? Yes. Do you know what reputation a woman will have after breaking an engagement? I do. And you still insist? What you want is an obedient wife from a Marquis's household, not me. I placed the agreement in his hand. Su Jingchuan's face went pale. Shen Jiwei, do not regret this, I will not. After saying that, I took Shen Mingzhu's hand and left. When I pulled her out of the main hall, her palm was covered in cold sweat. Only after we reached the courtyard did she ask, you truly won't marry Su Jingchuan? I won't. Because of me. Because he is not worth marrying, she sniffed. Then what will you do in the future? Run the workshop. What if no one wants to marry you? Then I will not marry. She looked as though this was the first time she had heard that a woman could choose such a life. When we returned to Liguang workshop, Gu Yanci was checking goods in the new storeroom. He saw me, but did not ask why I had ended my engagement. He simply handed me a key. The new storeroom has been organized. Why are you giving this to me? You oversee the storefront and new products. The storeroom's incoming and outgoing accounts should therefore be in your charge. Aren't you afraid my reputation after breaking the engagement will harm the workshop? Our partnership agreement does not state that. Mission must possess a respectable marriage. The moment I closed my hand around that key, I felt more secure than I ever had from all the gentle words Su Jingchuan had spoken to me. That night, while I was organizing the old documents, I discovered that a small box containing a wax impression of my old private seal was empty. Qingdai clearly remembered seeing it only a few days earlier. I stared at the empty box as a chill slowly spread down my back. Although the old seal had been officially declared invalid, someone could still create endless trouble by carving a copy. And the people in the manor who knew its exact design best were Father and Madame Liu. 10 days later, a group of men blocked the entrance to one of the estates my mother had left me. Their leader, a creditor surnamed Zhao, held a mortgage deed. The document clearly stated that I had borrowed 30,000 taels from him, using the estate as collateral. The signature read Shen Jiwei, with my old private seal stamped beneath it. Proprietor Zhao slapped the deed onto the table. Miss Shen, it is written clearly in black and white. Cannot simply deny it. I picked it up and read it from beginning to end. The stated signing date was the 6th day of the month. I had spent that entire day at Liguang workshop. I did not sign this, Proprietor Zhao sneered. Everyone who wishes to avoid repaying a debt says the same thing. Father and Madame Liu arrived soon afterward. The moment Father entered, he rebuked me. It is only the temporary mortgage of one estate. Why have you allowed the matter to become known to everyone? I looked at him so. Father knew about this deed. He looked uneasy. The household urgently needed money. I made the decision for you. Then why did you sign my name? You are my daughter. Why should I not be able to sign one deed for you, Proprietor? Zhao frowned. Marquis, that is not what you told me at the time you said. The eldest young lady personally consented, but found it inconvenient to appear. Father's face darkened. Proprietor Zhao, mind your words. I ordered Qingdai to bring the documents I had prepared in advance. This is the proof that I registered my new private seal with the government office. The old seal became invalid on the 28th day of last month. This deed was signed on the 6th day of this month. Even if the seal were genuine, it would have no legal effect. Proprietor Zhao's expression changed. He took the document and read it several times. Furthermore, the signature on the deed is not mine. I produced Liguang Workshop's account book for that day. I spent the entire 6th day at the workshop. 19 craftsmen and 3 visiting merchants saw me. Every one of them can testify if necessary. Father said coldly, witnesses can be bribed. Then what about the records of the seal carving shop? His expression stiffened. At my signal, Uncle Joe led someone inside. The manager of a seal carving shop held a small account ledger in both hands. On the second day of this month, someone brought the design of eldest young lady Shen's old seal to our shop and ordered a copy. The person who collected it was the nephew of Granny Ma from the Marquis's household. Madame Liu's face turned white. "You are lying," the manager hurriedly knelt. "I would not dare at the time that man said the Marquis's household needed it urgently. I even recorded his name in the ledger." Father turned sharply toward Madame Liu. She quickly said, "Marquis, I never ordered anyone to carve a seal, perhaps a servant acted on her own." I looked toward Shen Mingzhu. She stood by the doorway, her face pale. Several days earlier, she had seen Granny Ma take the little box containing the wax impression, but she had been too afraid of causing trouble to say anything. Now she finally stepped forward. "I saw it," Madame Liu said sharply. "Mingzhu, do not let anyone use you." On the 29th day of last month, I went to Madame Liu's courtyard to retrieve my designs. I saw Granny Ma place sister's wax impression inside her sleeve. Granny Ma also said that once the Marquis's household survived this crisis, father would love me even more. Her voice trembled, but she did not retreat. I did not tell sister then, because I was a coward. But today I am willing to write down everything I saw. I ordered writing materials to be prepared in front of everyone. She recorded the time, place, and events word by word. Finally, she signed her own name. Holding the mortgage deed, Proprietor Zhou's expression grew increasingly ugly. "Marquis, who exactly borrowed this money?" Father said in a deep voice. "The money was used for the Marquis's household. As a daughter of this household, Shen Jue should naturally bear responsibility." I met his gaze directly. "If you dared to carve my seal, you should dare to write your own name." "I do not recognize this debt." Proprietor Zhou immediately withdrew the deed. Since the eldest young lady's old seal had already been invalidated, and the seal carving shop has a record of the copy, this debt naturally cannot be collected from her. "Marquis, you were the one who took the silver. I can only seek repayment from you." Father's face turned ashen. "Shenjui, must you drive your own father into a dead end?" Father hid his name behind mine. "I merely brought it back into the open." He raised his hand. I did not move. The blow never fell. At some point, Gu Yanci had appeared at the doorway. He did not step forward to stop father. He merely said calmly, "There are outsiders present." Father's hand remained suspended in the air before he slowly lowered it. I did not thank Gu Yanci, and he did not say another word on my behalf. After the matter was settled, I stood alone beside the river outside the estate. Wind crossed the surface of the water, carrying the dampness of early summer. Gu Yanci came to stand beside me. "Do you regret it?" "I do not regret it. I simply never expected father would truly do this. Even when one already knows the ending, it still hurts when someone closest to you hands you the blade again." I paused. "Am I too heartless?" Gu Yanci did not immediately answer. Instead, he asked, "If Mingzhu's seal had been copied today, would you make her acknowledge the debt?" "No." "Why?" "Because she did not borrow it. Then neither should you acknowledge it." I turned toward him. "Is it truly that simple?" "It should always have been that simple. Many people merely like to use family affection to make simple matters sound complicated." I lowered my head and slowly released a breath. After returning to the manor, Shen Mingzhu came to see me. She stood at the doorway and refused to enter. That day I saw the wax impression being taken, but I did not tell you. I was afraid Madame Liu would accuse me of sowing discord, and I was afraid father would be angry. "Scold me if you want." I pushed a blank sheet of paper toward her. "You have already written the matter clearly and borne the consequences of testifying. This ends here." She stared at me. "You don't blame me?" I did. "Then why aren't you scolding me?" "Scolding you cannot change what has already happened. Remember the consequences of hesitating this time, and do not repeat the mistake." She lowered her head. "I feel as though I owe you more and more." My heart tightened abruptly. "You do not owe me your life." She looked up. "Who said anything about a life?" "I meant silver." I forced a smile. "Then repay it slowly." But beginning the next day, her behavior was clearly wrong. She gave the banknotes she had just earned to her personal maid. She handed several favorite dresses to the women working at the workshop. She even quietly returned the repaired cloisonné enamel earring to my jewelry case. Before the fire in my previous life, she had also given away the things she cherished most, one by one. When I found her, she was folding a new outfit into a trunk. "Where are you going?" Her hand shook. "Nowhere." "Then why are you giving your possessions away?" "I no longer like them. That red dress used to be your favorite." "It is not anymore." I stared at her. "Shen Mingzhu, what are you planning now?" She avoided my gaze. "Sister, do not interfere." At that moment I knew she had made a decision without telling me, and that decision would probably demand another sacrifice from her. I ordered King Dai to watch Shen Mingzhu's courtyard. That afternoon she changed into inconspicuous clothes and left the manor by carriage through a side gate. I followed her to a secondary residence in the western part of the city. A Feng family carriage stood outside. When I entered, Shen Mingzhu was already seated in a side hall. A marriage agreement, writing materials, and an ink pad lay on the table. Feng Xiaorong sat opposite her with Madame Lu beside him. When Madame Lu saw me, her expression changed slightly. "Jiwei, why are you here? If I had not come, would Mingzhu already have signed the marriage agreement?" Shen Mingzhu sprang to her feet. "This is my own affair." "Then why did you not say so at the Marquis's manor?" "I did not want you to know." "Why?" Her eyes reddened. "Father forged your seal. I clearly saw the wax impression being taken, but I failed to tell you in time. If I had spoken sooner, things would not have reached this point. The Feng family is willing to repay part of the debts of the Marquis's household, as long as I marry into their family. Then father will not be able to involve you again." I looked at Madame Lu. "Is that what you told her?" Madame Lu sighed. "I was only thinking of both sisters. Mingzhu feels guilty and wishes to help you once. That is her own intention." I walked to the table and picked up the marriage document. "Where are the attached terms?" Feng Xiaorong's gaze darkened. "The marriage agreement is here. The bride price is 30,000 taels. How large is the dowry? How will property be handled after the marriage? There must be additional terms." His expression hardened. "Those matters concern the Feng family and the Marquis's household. The bride has no right to read them." Shen Mingzhu froze. "There are additional terms?" I looked at her. "Before signing, you do not even know what you are agreeing to," Madame Lu said quickly. "They are only ordinary clauses and not worth examining closely. If they are ordinary, then show them." I ordered King Dai to open the wooden box beside the table. Madame Lu tried to stop her, but she was too late. 4 pages of supplementary terms lay inside. The first stated that after Shen Mingzhu's marriage, every dividend she earned from Liaguang workshop would be managed by the Feng family. The second stated that until she bore a child, she could not leave the Feng family residence without permission. The third required the Marquis's household to provide 20,000 taels in cash and 2 shops as her dowry. The fourth stated that if the household could not complete the dowry, any property Shen Mingzhu acquired in the future could be used to make up the difference. She read each clause, the color slowly drained from her face. "None of you told me this." Feng Xiaorong replied coldly. "A married woman should put her husband's household first. I am repaying the debts of the Marquis's household, so naturally I require security." Shen Mingzhu looked at Madame Lu. "You said he only wanted to marry me." Madame Lu avoided her eyes. "The Feng family is offering 30,000 taels. They cannot receive nothing in return. So I am the thing they receive?" No one answered. Her hand trembled around the brush. "If I do not sign, what will happen to sister? I have already separated my accounts from the Marquis's household. Father's debts cannot be imposed on me." Madame Liu said you had been deceived. Tears fell from Shen Mingzhu's eyes. "But I truly owe you." The fear and anger inside me could no longer be suppressed. "What do you owe me? I stole the designs. You are already repaying that loss. I saw the wax impression and did not speak. You have already testified. For years, I seized many things from you and said many cruel words. And therefore, I must repay you somehow." I snatched the brush from her hand. "Shen Mingzhu, when I told you to bear responsibility, I meant that you must correct your mistakes. I did not tell you to surrender your entire future to repay one moment of hesitation." She stared at me, stunned. This was the first time since my rebirth as I had truly lost my temper with her. Jewelry taken can be returned, silver owed can be earned. Cruel words can be followed by an apology. But your life and your future cannot be used to settle a debt, Feng Xiaorong said impatiently. "Have you sisters finished? The marriage agreement must be signed today." Shen Mingzhu lowered her eyes to the attached terms. After a long silence, she tore the pages apart one by one. Feng Xiaorong surged to his feet. "How dare you?" She threw the pieces in front of him. "I will not marry you. Whoever incurred the household's debts can repay them. And I will never give you the silver I earn myself." Feng Xiaorong's face turned livid. "The Marquis' household accepted the Feng family's deposit. If you refuse the marriage, return it immediately." Madame Lu panicked. "Master Feng, we can discuss this." "There is nothing to discuss." He swept out of the room. Madame Lu turned to scold Shen Mingzhu, but I stepped in front of my sister. Madame Lu should first consider where she will find the money to return the Feng family's deposit. She glared at us through clenched teeth. "Do you think women can live well after leaving the protection of their clan? Without a family behind you, anyone can mistreat you." Shen Mingzhu wiped away her tears. "At least the 12 taels I earned truly belong to me." When we left the residence, her legs weakened and she almost stumbled on the steps. I steadied her. She leaned against my shoulder and cried without a look. I almost let them deceive me again. Yes. Can't you comfort me? You saw through it this time, you will not repeat the mistake. What kind of comfort is that? A useful kind. She laughed through her tears. That night I went to see Gu Yanci. He was inspecting the new kiln. I told him what had happened. What frightens me most is not the collapse of the Marquis' household. It is that Mingzhu will again give herself away somewhere I cannot see. He did not ask what I meant by again, you know. You cannot live for her. I know. Nor can I watch her every moment. Then make certain she understands that whatever happens, you are willing to bear it together with her. I looked at him, and if she still tries to sacrifice herself, stop her. If stopping her once is not enough, stop her a second time. He spoke as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world, as though every fate could be chosen anew again and again. I reached out and held his fingers. Gu Yanci visibly stiffened for an instant. I did not let go. Gu Yanci, yes, when the affairs of the Marquis' household are over, I have something to tell you. He closed his hand around mine. All right. When I returned to the manor, the clan had already sent news. Proprietor Zal had reported father to the authorities for forging a deed and misappropriating ancestral property. In 3 days, officials would seal the Marquis' manor and examine both household and private assets. I was not surprised in this life. I had stopped covering the household's debts earlier. Its collapse had therefore come sooner than in my previous life. The future had changed. I could no longer depend on memories from that life. I could rely only on the preparations I had made now. While King Dai inventoried my clothes, she suddenly said, "Young lady, your moon-white dress is missing." Heart sank. Which one? The one with silver orchids embroidered at the cuffs. It was the very dress Shen Mingzhu had worn on the day the household was confiscated in my previous life. I rushed into her courtyard. The room was empty. All her banknotes and several pieces of jewelry lay on the table beside the old site plan of the manor. The western freight passage had been heavily circled in red. By the time I reached the western warehouse, night had fallen, the air reeked of lamp oil. The warehouse's side door stood open and an empty oil barrel lay on the ground. The sight told me at once what she intended. The smoke from the fire in my previous life seemed to rush at me again, and for an instant my legs nearly gave way. "Shen Mingzhu!" No one answered. I ran around to the weeds behind the warehouse. The hidden passage entrance had already been pushed open. Shen Mingzhu stood beside it in my moon-white gown, my jade hairpin in her hair and a tinder stick in her hand, exactly as she had in my previous life. I rushed forward and snatched the tinder stick from her hand. Shen Mingzhu stumbled back in shock. "Why are you here?" I raised my hand wanting to strike her, but my palm stopped in midair. In the end my hand came down heavily on her shoulder, and I pulled her into my arms. "What are you trying to do again?" she struggled. "Let go of me. The officers will enter the manor tomorrow. Father said, those accounts bear your name. He will certainly push everything onto you. I will stay here in your clothes and set fire to the western warehouse, so they believe you never left. You can escape through the hidden passage. Be quiet." I was trembling from head to toe. "Do you know there is oilcloth in the warehouse?" I checked. I would burn only one outer corner. It would not get out of control. She must have thought the same thing in my previous life, but fire never obeyed anyone's plans. "Come with me." "Why?" Her eyes were red, yet her voice was unnaturally calm. "Because you are more capable than I am. Li Guang Workshop needs you. The shops need you. If I remain behind, they will lose only someone who knows how to draw designs. If you escape, you can still save many more people." She lifted her chin and forced a smile. "Sister, your life is more useful than mine." A roar filled my ears. She had said exactly the same thing before the stone door closed in my previous life. I gripped her shoulders. "Who told you a person's life should be measured by how useful she is? I was never as good as you. Father chose you to bear the debts because you can read accounts. The Fang family chose me because I could be exchanged for a bride price. Now one of us must remain behind. Why must either of us remain?" She froze. "We were not the ones who committed the household's wrongs. We are not the ones who should bear the consequences. But Father can repay the debts he incurred. Grandmother can preserve the dignity she values herself. Neither you nor I owes the Marquis' household a life." Tears rolled down her face. "What about everything I owed you before? You seized my possessions, said cruel things, stole designs from the workshop, and remained silent when you most needed to speak. None of those mistakes is worth a life." I threw the tinder stick into the drainage ditch and stamped it out. "You are not the one who should be sacrificed, and you are not the one who must remain behind. In this life, neither of us stays." Urgent pounding suddenly sounded in the distance. The officers had unexpectedly arrived one night early. The manor instantly fell into chaos. Some people cried out, others carried trunks, and still, others tried to flee through the rear gate. Mingzhu clutched my sleeve. What do we do now? Go to the main hall. The hidden passage is right here, we can leave through it. I took her hand. We did nothing wrong, we do not have to hide in the main hall. Father was arguing with the leading officer. The Yangming Marquis household has served the dynasty for 100 years. How can you seal it merely because of a few contracts? The officer unfolded an official document. Someone has reported that the Yangming Marquis forged a private seal, misappropriated ancestral assets, and mortgaged estates under another person's name. Today we are only examining accounts and property. Women of the household, who are unrelated to these matters, will not be implicated. The moment father saw me, he pointed in my direction. She signed all those contracts. Shinjiwei has managed my late wife's dowry for years, and she also directed the household funds. If there are irregularities, she should be investigated first. Mingzhu tried to rush forward in anger. I tightened my grip on her hand and kept her behind me. Then I placed the document case I had prepared on the table. This is my mother's complete dowry inventory. This is the official declaration that my old private seal was invalid. This is the agreement formally separating my accounts from the Marquis' household. These are the records of the silver withdrawn from my mother's shops and estates during the past 5 years. This is the account ledger from the seal carving shop, together with Mingzhu's handwritten statement describing how the wax impression was taken. The officer examined each item one by one. Father's face grew increasingly pale. The sisters conspired together. Mingzhu has always been at odds with her. Why would she testify on her behalf? Mingzhu stepped out from behind me. Precisely because I used to be at odds with her. No one can claim I am lying out of favoritism. I wrote only what I saw. Father shouted, "You ungrateful daughter! The Marquis' household fed and clothed you and arranged your marriage. Is this how you repay us?" Her body trembled faintly. I thought she might retreat, but she merely removed the gold hairpin grandmother had given her and placed it on the table. The cost of my food and clothing can be repaid in silver. I did not ask for the marriage. As for the identity the Marquis' household gave me, I no longer want that either. Father raised his hand to strike her. I stepped in front of my sister. Father, the officers are still here. Just as when Gu Yanci had reminded him before. Father's hand stopped again. Only this time I was the person standing in front of Ming. The officers eventually ordered the household account book sealed and took father and several stewards involved in the transactions away. Madame Liu was also required to remain for investigation because she had transferred private property belonging to women of the household. Grandmother sat in her chair, crying that the Marquis' household was finished. Before father was led through the door, he turned and glared at me. "You destroyed this household." I looked back at him. The household was already destroyed the first time it exchanged a daughter for silver. I did not plead for him or ask that the title be preserved. I only asked the officers to follow the dowry inventory and separately register the property that legally belonged to Mingzhu and me. At dawn, the gates of the Marquis' manor finally opened. Gu Yanci stood outside. Several carriages waited behind him, loaded with the workshop account books I had moved in advance and the belongings of several elderly servants who wished to leave with us. He did not ask what had happened inside. He only walked up and took the document case from my hands. "Is everything finished?" "It is." "Then let us go home." Mingzhu stood inside the threshold and looked back at the manor where she had lived for 16 years. "Sister." "Yes?" "Are we truly leaving through the front gate?" "Yes." "Wouldn't the hidden passage be faster?" I held her hand. "We did nothing wrong. From now on we do not have to live in hiding." We crossed the threshold side by side. Morning sunlight fell across the street. There was no blaze, no smoke, and no one had been left behind. After we had walked a long distance, Mingzhu suddenly took the cloisonné enamel hairpin from inside her robe. "Didn't you leave it on the table?" I went back and retrieved it. "Why?" Looking down at the hairpin, she said quietly, "It is not that I dislike it. Every time I see it, I remember the way you looked at me on the day you gave me the jewelry, as though I had already died once." My steps stopped. She looked up at me. "Sister, are you hiding something from me?" I gazed at her living, expressive face and finally only smiled. "I will tell you another time," she frowned. "You always do that." "Let us return to the workshop first." Gu Yanci prepared breakfast. She immediately looked toward Gu Yanci ahead of us. "Why did he prepare only yours?" Without turning around, Gu Yanci replied, "I prepared 3 portions." Only then was she satisfied. Looking at the two of them, I suddenly felt that the fire from my previous life had finally gone out. In the end, the Yangming Marquis' title was revoked. Father was convicted of forging contracts and misappropriating ancestral property. He was ordered to return all illicit gains and sentenced to 3 years of hard labor. The gambling debts elder brother had accumulated by relying on the household status were also recalculated. Once the title was gone, no one remained to clean up after him. Most of the dowry property and silver Madame Liu had secretly transferred was recovered. Her natal family had expected her to return with substantial assets, but when they learned that the money had all been seized, they placed her in a remote little courtyard. She once sent me a letter. In it, she said that everything she had done was merely to establish herself in the Marquis's household. She also said that a woman without anyone to rely upon had no choice but to plan for herself. After reading it, I placed the letter into the brazier. I did not deny her desire to survive, but her survival should not have depended on destroying the lives of 2 other women. The clan's settled grandmother in the old ancestral residence. She never believed that she had done anything wrong. Whenever someone visited, she called Mingzhu and me unfilial daughters who had destroyed a century-old Marquis's household over a few shops. When Mingzhu heard, she became so angry that she wanted to argue with her. I stopped her. There is no reason to keep explaining to someone who refuses to understand. But she is our grandmother. Precisely because she is our grandmother, we have already explained ourselves many times. She still chooses to condemn us. That is her choice. I no longer needed grandmother to admit that I was right, nor did I need father to regret what he had done. True separation did not mean forcing them to kneel before me and apologize. It meant that whether they understood me or not could no longer affect my life. Su Jingchuan later became engaged to the daughter of a minor official. I heard that her dowry was modest, and that his mother complained bitterly. Once he waited for me outside Liguang workshop. Jue, only now do I understand that there were indeed things I handled poorly in the past. I looked at him, and then, if you are willing, we can still reconsider our marriage. I am no longer willing. His expression became awkward. Because of Gu Yanci? Because I do not want to marry you. This time I gave him no comforting excuse. No one else had taken me from him. I was not acting out of temporary anger. I had simply seen him clearly and chosen not to marry him. He stood there for a long time before finally turning away. After the fall of the Marquis's household, Feng Xiaorong quickly distanced himself from it. He announced publicly that he had never formally become engaged to Mingzhu. But too many people had already seen the supplementary clauses. Several families in the capital that had once considered marrying their daughters into the Feng family withdrew. It was not because he had once sought to marry a concubine-born daughter of a Marquis's household. No one wanted to give a daughter to a man who had calculated how to seize all of his future wife's property before the marriage agreement was even signed. Many customers came on the day Liguang Workshop lit its kilns again. I oversaw the accounts and the direction of new products. Gu Yanci managed craftsmanship, raw materials, and business operations. Every major decision required both our signatures. We did not abandon contracts because we had grown close. On the contrary, the closer 2 people were, the more important it was to clarify everything in advance. Mingzhu also received her own counter. Her jewelry used bright colors, remained affordable, and was especially popular with young women. She named the series the Mingzhu collection. On the first day of business, she argued with the accountant for an hour. Why do I receive only 20% of the profit? The accountant replied helpless. Second young lady, the workshop provides the materials, craftsmen, storefront, and customers. You are responsible only for the designs. What do you mean by only the designs? Without my drawings, who would buy anything? Gu Yanci happened to pass nearby. If you are willing to bear the cost of the materials and the risk that the products may not sell, you may take 50%. She immediately fell silent. A moment later, she muttered, 20% is not so little. She still loved beautiful things, hated losing, and never spared anyone with her tongue, but the craftsmen no longer treated her as the second young lady of a Marquis's household. They pointed out her mistakes, and they also applauded her new designs. When she earned her first 100 taels, she bought 2 new outfits, one for herself and one for me. Do not misunderstand. She tossed the clothes into my arms. The shop happened to offer 2 for the price of 1. I touched the fabric. They offered 2 identical sizes for the price of 1. Her face reddened. Are you going to wear it or not? I will. Only then was she satisfied. Gu Yanci proposed to me on the second day after Liaguang Workshop's new kiln successfully completed its firing. There was no banquet and no courtyard full of guests. He placed only one table in the rear courtyard of the workshop, with 2 documents on it. One was a marriage agreement. The other was an agreement keeping our property separate after marriage. The contract stated that the dowry, shops, and shares in Liguang workshop under my name would remain my personal property. The workshop assets and old Gu family property under his name would remain under his own management. Any property we purchased together in the future would require both our signatures. Neither of us could use marriage as a reason to dispose of the other's property without permission. I read from beginning to end. Young Master Gu discusses contracts before proposing marriage? Because I want us to stay together for a long time. It is all the more important to discuss these things clearly. Aren't you afraid people will say we are too formal with each other for a married couple? Others will not live our life for us. I raised my eyes to him. When did you begin wanting to marry me? He was silent for a moment. The first time you refused to pay for Mingzhu's damaged earring. I could not help laughing. You liked me even then? At that time, I only thought you were different from the other young ladies of noble households I had met. And later? Later, you reclaimed your seal and refused to bear the debts of the Marquis' household. You were clearly afraid, yet you still led Mingzhu out through the front gate. He looked at me. I want to walk beside you. I do not want to make decisions for you, nor turn what belongs to you into mine. Husband and wife can walk side by side without either one absorbing the other. I picked up the brush and signed my name on the marriage agreement. All right. The day before our wedding, I opened the red sandalwood box. The cloisonné enamel jewelry from years earlier was still inside. A nearly invisible fine line remained across the repaired earring. I kept the earrings and placed the bangle and hairpin before Shen Mingzhu. She was trying on new clothes. Seeing them, she deliberately raised her eyebrows. Didn't you say that if I liked the jewelry I could have all of it? Why are you keeping the earrings for yourself? I lifted the hairpin and placed it in her hair. The blue enamel set off her bright eyes. You may take the jewelry you like. Then why keep the earrings? They remind me that even something once cracked can be repaired. She touched the hairpin in her hair. You are becoming increasingly skilled at saying pleasant things. I took her hand. Mingzhu, what? I can give you anything else but not my life. Her smile slowly faded. Sister, you really are hiding many things from me. I looked at her. Do you want to know? Of course. So I told her about my previous life. I told her that on the day the Marquis' household was confiscated, she pushed me into the hidden passage, put on my clothes, and set fire to the western warehouse. I told her that I escaped holding the cloisonné enamel hairpin and clung to life outside the capital for 3 years before dying there. By the end she was crying too hard to speak. How could I have been so foolish? You were extremely foolish. Can't you comfort me? You always treated yourself as someone who could be sacrificed. There is nothing comforting about that. Still crying, she hit my arm. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I feared you would not believe me. I still do not believe you. Then why are you crying? Can't I cry for my foolish self from that other life? She threw herself into my arms. Shenjie, remember this. You are never allowed to leave me behind again. All right, and you are not allowed to shoulder everything alone. All right, if Gu Yanci mistreats you, I will lead every worker in the workshop on strikes. Gu Yanci's voice suddenly sounded from outside the door. The workshop agreement states that wages will be deducted for an unjustified strike. Shen Mingzhu immediately raised her head from my arms. You were eavesdropping on us? The door was open. How much did you hear? Beginning from the part where you threatened to make everyone strike. She wiped her tears and charged outside to argue with him. I remained beside the window and looked at myself in the mirror. Sunlight shone brightly outside. There were no flames, no smoke, and no stone door, slowly closing between us. After our marriage, Gu Yanci and I continued living near Liguang workshop. I did not try to restore the Yongning Marquis' title or rebuild the household's former glory. We expanded the kiln rooms and accepted more female apprentices. Shen Mingzhu opened branches of the Mingzhu collection as far south as Jiangnan. Whenever she wrote home, she first boasted about how much silver she had earned, then complained that the accountant was stingy and the craftsman stubborn. But she always added one final line. Sister, I am doing well. You do not need to worry. One spring, she returned from Jiangnan. We stood side by side beneath the newly hung sign of Liguang workshop. The cloisonné enamel hairpin was still in her hair, its blue pattern as bright in the sunlight as it had been at the beginning. The fire that consumed the Marquis' household in my previous life never burned again. Yet some things were still reduced to ashes. The rule that an elder sister must always sacrifice herself. The fear that a younger sister had to seize things in order to be seen, and the chains demanding that women repay their families with dowries and marriages. All of those things remained inside the fallen Marquis' manor. Neither of us became the one sacrificed in the other's place. Extra Story 1. The first time Gu Yanci got jealous, it was over a cat in the 3rd month after our marriage. An uninvited guest appeared at Liuguang workshop. It was a cat, or more precisely, an extremely round, fat white cat with one small patch of black fur on its forehead. The first time it appeared, it was lying at the entrance to the kiln room eating Gu Yanci's lunch. Gu Yanci stood inside, holding a half-open account book. His expression was as cold as though he had discovered someone stealing Liuguang workshop's secret formula. By the time I arrived, the cat had eaten half a fish and was standing on Gu Yanci's shoe while licking its paw. "Whose cat is this?" I crouched and stroked its head. The cat immediately lifted its face and gave me a soft meow. Gu Yanci looked down at it. "I do not know." "Then why did you let it eat your food?" "It had already begun eating, you could have chased it away." "It bites." I looked at the cat, then at Gu Yanci. The round animal rubbed itself against my hand. It did not bite, and it did not even extend its claws. "It seems very gentle." After a moment of silence, Gu Yanci said, "Only toward you." The cat remained at the workshop. When Mingzhu learned about it, she came specifically to see the cat. She walked around it 3 times and offered a serious opinion. "That patch of black fur on its forehead looks as though a lump of kiln ash fell on it. We should call it coal ball." I lifted the white cat. "How does it resemble a coal ball?" "Then white coal ball." Gu Yanci ultimately named the cat Snowball because, in his words, the name was simple and easy to remember. Mingzhu strongly objected. "Gu Yanci, your naming has no literary grace at all. And yours does? Of course. Then why is your jewelry line called the Mingzhu collection?" Mingzhu glared at him for a long moment, picked up the cat, and walked away. Snowball became extremely attached to me. When I read accounts, it lay across my lap. When I ate, it crouched beside my feet. At night when I returned to our room, Snowball would even leap onto the bed before me and occupy the softest part of the mattress. At first Gu Yanci said nothing. Then one day he returned from a journey. When he pushed open the bedroom door, he found Snowball lying on its back across my pillow, while I scratched beneath its chin. I laughed. "Snowball, have you grown even fatter?" Gu Yanci set down his luggage. "It has." Was the journey tiring? Not especially. "What happened with the shipment of materials from Jiangnan?" "The negotiations are settled." I patted the place beside me. "Come sit." He walked to the bed but did not sit down. His gaze fell on Snowball. Snowball stared back. Man and cat faced one another for a long time. Finally, Snowball rolled over and laid its tail across my wrist. Gu Yanci turned and left. I blinked. "Where are you going?" "The study." "You only just returned and you are already going to read accounts?" "Yes." His voice sounded unnaturally calm. The calmer he became, the more certain I was that something was wrong. That evening, I carried tea to the study. Gu Yanci was indeed reading accounts, but he had stared at the same page for an hour without turning it. I set down the tea. "Who upset Proprietor Gu today?" "No one." "Did a supplier force down a price?" "No." "Did a craftsman make an error?" "No." I thought for a moment. "Then did I upset you?" At last he looked up. "You did not." "Then why are you wearing such a grim face?" "I always look like this before our marriage. I assumed you looked stern because you were cold by nature. After our marriage, when you look stern, I know something is troubling you." Gu Yanci was silent for a while. "Snowball should sleep somewhere else." I nearly laughed. "Why?" "It sheds. The room is cleaned every day. It is too fat. Fat cats are adorable. It takes up space." I finally lost control of my laughter. "Gu Yanci, are you jealous of a cat?" His face remained expressionless. "No." "Then tomorrow I will let Snowball continue sleeping beside my pillow." He immediately said, "No." I leaned over the table laughing for a long time. Gu Yanci watched me as the tips of his ears gradually turned red. "Is it so amusing?" "A little, Shenjue." "Yes?" "I was away for 10 days. And the first thing you asked was whether Snowball had grown fatter." I considered this carefully. It appeared to be true. "Then I will ask about you now, Gu Yancis. Have you grown thinner?" "No." "Did you miss me on the road?" "Yes." The answer came remarkably quickly. I walked around the table, bent down, and embraced his shoulders. "I missed you too." His expression finally softened. "More than you missed Snowball?" "Much more." "How much more?" I deliberately considered it for a long time. "1 whole fish more." Gu Yanci pulled me into his arms. "Snowball sleeps outside tonight. It will scratch at the door. Let it." Sure enough, in the middle of the night, faint scratching came from outside our door. I tried to rise and open it, but Gu Yanci stopped me. "Ignore it." Snowball meowed twice. I felt sorry for it. It is still young. It already weighs 8 jin, about 4 kilograms. It is cold outside. There is a cushion by the door. It will be afraid. With his eyes closed, Gu Yanci answered firmly, "Do not open the door." An hour later, the scratching woke me again. When I opened my eyes, Gu Yanci was no longer beside me. I quietly opened the door and saw him sitting under the eaves in an outer robe. Snowball was asleep across his lap. I leaned against the doorway. "Weren't you going to leave it outside?" Gu Yanci looked up at me. It would not stop meowing. "You softened?" "I was afraid it would disturb you," smiling. I walked toward him. The next day, when Shen Mingzhu arrived, she found Gu Yanci holding Snowball while inspecting newly fired cloisonné enamel cat tags. She stared in astonishment. "Didn't you say yesterday that it sheds?" Gu Yanci answered calmly. "I had a separate bed made for it." "Oh!" Shen Mingzhu drew out the sound. "So proprietor Gu even becomes jealous of a cat." Gu Yanci looked at me. I immediately lowered my eyes and drank my tea. Shen Mingzhu asked again, "Can Snowball still enter your room in the future?" Gu Yanci said, "No." That very night, Snowball slept at the foot of our bed again. Gu Yanci said Snowball had jumped up by itself. In any case, he certainly had not carried it inside. Naturally, I believed him. Extra story 2. Shin Mingzhu nearly drove the accountant sick on her branch's opening day. When Shin Mingzhu opened the first Jiangnan branch of the Mingzhu collection, she insisted that Gu Yanci and I come in person. Her letter was extremely confident. "Sister, do not worry. I have already chosen the shop, and all the staff have been hired. The opening will certainly proceed without a single problem. You need only come and watch me manage everything independently." The moment I read that sentence, I had a bad feeling. Sure enough, on our first day in Jiangnan, we found a crowd packed 3 rows deep outside the branch. Shen Mingzhu stood at the doorway holding a brass gong. "For today's grand opening, buy 1 piece of jewelry and receive another free." The gathered young women cheered. The accountant almost fainted on the spot. "Proprietor Shen, you cannot give them away." "Why not? Our profit was already modest. Buy 1, get 1 free will make us lose money." Shen Mingzhu was unconcerned. "The most important thing on opening day is popularity. Once we draw customers in, we can earn the money back later." The accountant clutched his abacus, his hands trembling. "But yesterday you also promised the first 100 customers a free cloisonné enamel bell." "Yes, and anyone wearing red receives 1 tail off. If her name contains the character Zhu, which means pearl, she receives another tail off." Shen Mingzhu nodded. "What is the problem?" The accountant closed his eyes. "Today is the city's embroiderers' gathering. 8 of every 10 young women are wearing red. And women in this region are most often named with characters such as pearl, jade, flower, or embroidery." The smile on Shen Mingzhu's face slowly stiffened. So for every item we sell, we lose the equivalent value of at least 3 items." She fell silent. Outside, the customers were still cheering. "Proprietor Shen is so generous. Buy 1, get 1 free. My name is Wang Kuiju and I am wearing red. Can it be even cheaper?" Shen Mingzhu drew a deep breath. "Of course." The accountant nearly blacked out and grabbed the counter for support. Standing beyond the crowd, I shook with suppressed laughter. Gu Yanci, however, remained composed. "Shall we go inside?" "Not yet, let us watch a little longer." "Aren't you afraid she will lose everything?" "She must truly suffer a loss once before she understands that discounts cannot all be combined." By noon, every item in the shop had been snatched up. Shin Mingzhu stood before the empty shelves in a daze. The accountant worked his abacus with a rapid clatter. Today's total revenue was 320 taels. Her eyes brightened. "Not bad." The cost was 680 taels. The light in her eyes went out. "How much did we lose?" 360 taels. "How could we lose so much?" The accountant finally could not restrain himself. "Proprietor Shen, you offered buy 1, get 1 free, then reduced the price for red clothing, reduced it again for names containing Zhu, and added a free bell. You were not opening a shop. You were distributing the family fortune." Shen Mingzhu turned saw me. She immediately straightened her back. "Sister, when did you arrive?" "Just now," Gu Yanci added calmly. 2 hours ago." She glared fiercely at him. "Why didn't you warn me? Your letter said everything was proceeding smoothly and that we only needed to watch you manage independently. And so you truly just watched?" She was too angry to continue. I entered the shop and looked through the accounts. Although we lost silver today, the day was not a total loss. The accountant stared at me in disbelief. "Madam Shen, you still do not consider this a bad thing? At least every young woman in the city now knows the Mingzhu collection has opened." Shen Mingzhu immediately nodded. "Sister is right, as long as they return we can slowly earn back the loss." The accountant asked, "But we have no stock left. The next shipment arrives tomorrow." Gu Yanci asked, "Will it also be buy 1, get 1 free?" Shen Mingzhu shook her head at once. "No. A discount for wearing red? No. A discount for names containing Zhu. Any customer whose name contains Zhu will pay full price." Outside, a young woman named Kuizu had not yet left. Hearing this, she leaned in. "Proprietor Shen, you will not take back what I bought today, will you?" Shen Mingzhu forced a smile. No, can I come again tomorrow? Yes. Will there be another discount? No. Guizhu shrank back, hugged her 4 jewelry boxes and ran away. The accountant finally released a breath of relief. However, a new problem arrived the next day. The customers who had purchased jewelry on opening day displayed it proudly throughout the city. Other young women who had missed the promotion came to ask why those customers had received free items while they had not. Shen Mingzhu was temporarily speechless. She could not possibly repeat the entire giveaway, I reminded her. Let yesterday's customers bring in new customers. The new customer pays the normal price, while the returning customer receives 1 free repair or cord replacement service. Her eyes lit up. This way, we can keep customers without giving away jewelry, Gu Yanci added, and set a daily limit. The accountant immediately said, there must be a limit. The branch therefore introduced a referral program. A returning customer who brought a new customer received 1 free repair or cord replacement, with only a fixed number available each day. In less than half a month, the shop not only recovered the money lost on opening day, but also gained a stable group of customers. Shen Mingzhu became immensely proud. In a letter to the craftsmen in the capital, she announced that the opening of the Jingnan branch had been a magnificent success. The accountant happened to see it and muttered, first a huge loss, then a narrow victory. She turned toward him. What did you say? Nothing. I heard you. Proprietor Shen is wise. Too quiet. Proprietor Shen is wise, Shen. Mingzhu nodded with satisfaction. Before we returned to the capital, she invited us to dinner. During the meal, she raised her cup. Although there were a few minor complications in opening this shop, the experience proves that I can now manage and… Gu Yanci asked. Losing 360 taels is a minor complication? She slapped her chopsticks onto the table. Can you stop mentioning that? I poured her tea. We truly should not mention it constantly. She immediately hugged my arm. Sister is still the one who loves me, I continued slowly. After all, the accountant has already written the incident into the branch rules and hung them on the wall. Her expression froze. What did he write? The accountant cleared his throat. Discounts may not be combined. The cost of a buy one get one promotion must be calculated in advance. Proprietor Shen must inform the accountant before striking a gong to announce any last-minute promotion. Shen Mingzhu chased the accountant halfway down the street. Afterward, every new accountant at the Jiangnan branch read those 3 rules upon taking the post. They reportedly served as an excellent warning. Extra Story 3. My sister and I tried to teach our niece, only to be taught by her. Shen Mingzhu married 3 years after I did. Her husband was neither a nobleman's son nor a wealthy merchant. He was Luan, a young manager who operated a dye house in Jiangnan. They argued the first time they met. Shen Mingzhu insisted that the pomegranate red he produced was not bright enough. Luan replied that the earrings she designed were too heavy, and no one would buy them, no matter how brilliant the color. When I heard the story, it sounded remarkably familiar. Later they worked together while continuing to argue. Somehow, amid all the disputes, they became engaged in the 2nd year of their marriage. Shen Mingzhu gave birth to a daughter named Yuanwen. By the age of 3, Yuanwen had fully inherited her mother's competitive streak and stubborn refusal to admit defeat. The first time she visited my home, she noticed a cloisonné enamel butterfly box on my dressing table. She pointed a small finger at it. Auntie, I want that. Gu Yanci was drinking tea nearby. He looked at me and I looked at him. Both of us remembered the day many years before when Shen Mingzhu stormed into my room to seize the cloisonné enamel jewelry. Shen Mingzhu immediately lifted her daughter away. You may not take things without permission. Yuan struggled. Mother said that if I like something I should say so. Saying so does not mean you must receive it. But mother seized auntie's jewelry when she was little. The room instantly fell silent. I raised my teacup and slowly took a sip. Gu Yanci lowered his head, his eyes full of laughter. Shen Mingzhu's face reddened. Who told you that? Yuan pointed outside. The old maid from my maternal grandmother's courtyard. She said mother had taken things from others many times. Be quiet. She also said mother once stole design drafts. Yuan was not frightened at all. Mother said I must not lie. Shen Mingzhu was silenced by the very principle she had taught her daughter, her face turning dark with embarrassment. I took down the cloisonné enamel butterfly box and placed it before Yuanwen. Do you like it? She nodded vigorously. Yes. Then, what will you exchange for it? She tilted her head and thought. I have candy. I do not eat candy. I have a small wooden horse. I do not need one. Her little face wrinkled. Then what can I do? You may complete one task that I need done. What task? I pointed to a stack of pattern papers on the table. Put all papers of the same color together for me. Yuan sat down immediately. Though young, she worked very seriously. She made one pile of red paper, one of blue, and one of green. By the end, she had not made a single mistake. I handed her the butterfly box. "Now it belongs to you." She hugged it, her eyes curving with delight. Watching from nearby, Mingzhu asked, "Sister, you are simply giving it to her?" She completed the exchange. "But that box is very expensive. If she likes the jewelry, she may take it." I deliberately repeated my words from years before. The corner of Mingzhu's mouth twitched. "How long will you remember that?" "For the rest of my life." Yuan suddenly asked, "Did mother also work in exchange for jewelry before?" I laughed. "No, she took it directly." Mingzhu lunged over to cover my mouth. "Shenjue," Gu Yanci finally laughed aloud. From that day onward, Yuan developed a great interest in exchanging work for things. When she wanted pastries, she brushed Snowball's fur for me. When she wanted a new silk ribbon, she helped the accountant count copper coins. 9 times out of 10 she lost count, but she remained extremely enthusiastic. One day she noticed an inkstone in Gu Yanci's study. "Uncle, I want this." Gu Yanci asked, "What will you exchange for it?" Yuan thought for a moment. "May I draw you a picture?" "I can look at the drawing before deciding," he replied. An hour later, she returned with a sheet of paper. It showed one rectangular person beside an enormous white cat. Gu Yanci studied it for a long time. "Which one is me?" Yuan pointed to the rectangle. "This one. Why does it have no face? Uncle always looks stern." I could not draw it. I laughed so hard that I could barely straighten my back. After a moment of silence, Gu Yanci said, "I cannot give you the inkstone." Yuan immediately asked, "Why? The drawing does not resemble me." "What part does not resemble you?" "I am not that short." But Auntie said, "People should not judge only by appearance." Gu Yanci turned toward me. I immediately said, "I never said that." Yuan certainly knew how to use my words when it suited her. Yuan hugged the inkstone. "Uncle agreed to exchange. You cannot change your mind." "I never agreed to give you this inkstone." "You said yes." "I said I would look at the drawing before deciding." She frowned and thought for a long time. Realizing that she truly had not listened carefully, she finally put the inkstone back. As she left, she muttered, "Uncle calculates even more carefully than the accountant." When Mingzhu heard about it, she immediately instructed her daughter, "Whenever you speak with Gu Yanci, you must listen clearly to every word." Yuan asked, "Why?" "Because he likes writing contracts." "What is a contract?" "It means writing down what people said on paper so no one can deny it later." Yuan nodded thoughtfully. The next day, she came to me carrying a sheet of paper covered in circles. "Auntie, sign this." "What contract is this?" "What does it say?" "Every day I brush Snowball's fur, Auntie gives me 1 pastry. Uncle is not allowed to take my pastry." Gu Yanci stood behind me. "Why does the final clause concern me?" Yuan answered solemnly. "Because Uncle ate my osmanthus cake yesterday. You placed it on my account book. It was still mine even if it was on the account book. Your name was not written on it." Yuan immediately took up a brush and drew a circle on every cake on the table. "Now they are marked." Gu Yanci stared at the entire table of marked cakes, speechless for a long moment. Holding back laughter, I pressed my fingerprint onto the contract. Yuan then offered the paper to Gu Yanci. "Uncle, sign too. I am not a party to this contract." "But you might secretly eat them." "I did not steal anything. If you did not ask, it was stealing." Mingzhu clapped nearby. Said. Gu Yanci looked at her. "Your daughter took 3 silk ribbons from the Mingzhu collection yesterday." Mingzhu's smile stiffened. Yuan immediately said, "Mother said she did not want them." "When did I say that?" "You said the colors were ugly and threw them aside." "I was preparing to dye them again." Mother and daughter began arguing on the spot. One insisted that the ribbons had been discarded, while the other claimed she had only set them aside temporarily. At last, Yuan hugged the ribbons and asked, "Mother, are you unwilling to give them to me?" Mingzhu immediately fell silent. She knew that question far too well. She crouched and spoke seriously to her daughter. "It is not that I am unwilling. You should have asked before taking them. No matter whether something is valuable or worthless, you cannot simply take another person's property." Yuan asked, "Then why did mother seize things when she was little?" Mingzhu drew a deep breath. "Because mother was ignorant when she was little. Do you understand now?" "Yes. Will you seize things again?" "No." Yuan nodded with satisfaction and returned the 3 ribbons. "Then I will not seize them either. I will exchange brushing Snowball's fur for them." Snowball was lying in the sunlight on the window ledge. Hearing its name, it opened its eyes warily. An hour later, Yuan had brushed its fur until Snowball looked like an enormous ball of fluff. Gu Yanci glanced over. "It looks even fatter." Yuan hugged Snowball. "Fat cats are adorable." I could not help looking toward Gu Yanci. I had said the same thing years ago. He plainly remembered as well and silently looked away. That night, Wang Yuan slept in the guest room, while Shen Mingzhu sat in the courtyard and suddenly sighed. Raising a child is truly difficult. You have only just realized? Was I this troublesome when I was little? More troublesome than she is. Did I have so many absurd arguments? At least she understands exchange. You used to understand only how to seize things. She glared at me, then laughed. Fortunately, you were given another chance. Otherwise, I might never have learned in my entire life. I held her hand. I did not teach you, you were willing to learn. Yuan's voice suddenly came from inside. Mother, uncle secretly ate my cake. Shen Mingzhu immediately rushed into the room. Gu Yanci! Gu Yanci leaned his head out from the study. I did not. Wang Yuan held up the empty plate in accusation. One piece is missing. Gu Yanci replied without expression. Snowball ate it. Everyone looked toward the window at the same time. A few crumbs of osmanthus cake clung to Snowball's mouth while it carefully licked its paw. Yuan ran over and hugged the cat. Snowball did not do it on purpose. Gu Yanci asked, why is it all right when Snowball eats it? Because Snowball cannot speak. It cannot deny doing it. Gu Yanci fell silent. Shen Mingzhu laughed so hard that she had to hold the doorframe. I looked at the room full of people making a cheerful commotion and my heart softened with warmth. In the Marquis' household of my previous life, we always fought over who had received more. In this life, we still argued over who ate the cake, whether discarded ribbons truly counted as discarded, and whose room Snowball would sleep in that night. But after these arguments, no one was sent to kneel in the ancestral hall, and no one had to use her life to prove whom she loved more. Yuan ultimately divided the remaining cakes into 4 portions, one for herself, one for me, one for Shen Mingzhu, and one for Gu Yanci. Snowball received none that day because it had stolen a piece. But when I awoke in the middle of the night, I saw Gu Yanci quietly placing his own portion into Snowball's little bowl. The next day, Yuan discovered it and immediately produced her contract. Uncle broke the agreement, Gu Yanci asked. Which clause says I cannot give my cake to Snowball? Yuan searched for a long time but could not find one. Furious, she added a new clause. From that day onward, every contract in our household ended with one line of crooked little writing. Snowball is not allowed to steal food. Snowball could not read, so it continued eating as usual. Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. I was Li Pingyang, the Grand Princess whose power overshadowed both the imperial court and the realm. Even my imperial younger brother on the throne had to greet me with, "May imperial elder sister enjoy 10,000 blessings." Every day, all I had to do was sprawl across a daybed lined with snow-white fox fur in the Grand Princess residence, crack melon seeds, eat grapes, and listen to music. My life was so comfortable that even the dogs wandering through my estate were fatter than other people's dogs. But supreme power always came with supreme controversy. To make the Empress Dowager lower her guard at court and stop planting spies throughout my residence, I decided to abandon my pure and virtuous image and disguise myself as a wildly promiscuous grand princess. I began taking male favorites with reckless enthusiasm. In one breath, I admitted 8 of them and filled all 8 side rooms in the south courtyard. The people of Shangjing cursed me behind my back, calling me shameless and depraved. Every day, the censors submitted memorials accusing me of disgracing the imperial family. I merely curled my lip. What did those ordinary fools know? I had not taken 8 male favorites because I possessed any extraordinary appetite. I did it because I had a secret I could not tell anyone. I had been born with prosopagnosia, what ordinary people called face blindness. That was right. Whether I was looking at the most handsome man beneath the heavens or 2 beggars from the marketplace, their features were equally blurred in my eyes, like lumps of freshly kneaded dough. If the emperor stood before me without his dragon robe, I might mistake him for a white radish. That was why I distinguished the 8 men in the south courtyard by very specific signs. Number 1 was Mo Su, a cool and aloof scholar. He always smelled of pine, soot ink, wore white every day, and used his long, slender fingers only to play the zither. Number 2 was Gu Ying, a cold swordsman, who never spoke more than 3 words at a time. The character meaning, lone, was carved into his sword hilt, and the calluses on his hand were extremely thick. Number 3 was Mingzhu, the most flirtatious fox spirit of the lot. He loved wearing red, and the fragrance on his body was so strong that I would start sneezing from 10 zhang away, more than 30 meters. Whenever he saw me, he threw himself at me and began sobbing pitifully. Number 4 was Nanxing, a gentle physician. His hands always carried the faint scent of medicinal herbs and his massage technique was exceptional. Number 5 was Ya, a wild little wolf cub of a young man. A small scar marked the corner of his mouth, and he was always hugging his crescent saber. He loved performing saber dances for me. Number 6 was Fan Yin, a warrior monk from the western regions. His head was shaved completely bare, a string of sandalwood prayer beads hung around his neck, and he was quiet and reserved. Number 7 was Shopkeeper Song, the shrewd owner of a tea house. He had a shrill voice and was always hiding in a corner, clicking his abacus while calculating money for me. Number 8 was Nighthawk, a loyal secret guard who wore black all year round and spent most of his time hiding on the roof beams. 8 people, 8 cents, and 8 sets of habits. The rules in my residence were strict, and the household ledger clearly recorded which man was assigned to attend my bedchamber each night. I had never confused them. On Mondays, I listened to Mosu play. On Tuesdays, I called Nanxing to massage my shoulders. On Wednesdays, I watched Ya perform with his saber. No one stepped on anyone else's turn. Everything was perfectly orderly. But when speaking of the men in my residence, I could not ignore the one living in the north courtyard, my lawfully wedded husband, Prince Consort Shen Yu. He was the son of the Marquis of Dingyuan. Years ago, the Empress Dowager had arranged our marriage and planted him beside me, so he could monitor every movement in the Grand Princess's residence. Unexpectedly, only 3 days after he entered my household, Shen Yu developed tuberculosis. His illness was so severe that he coughed up an entire basin of blood every day. If the wind blew a little too strongly, he looked as though he might fly away like a sheet of paper. As a broad-minded and generous person, I naturally would not quarrel with a man who was already halfway into his grave. I tossed him into the most secluded side room of the north courtyard, ordered bitter medicine delivered every day, and occasionally sent him a few thousand-year-old ginseng roots to keep him alive. He did not interfere with my taking male favorites, and I paid no attention to his tuberculosis. We treated each other with distant courtesy and stayed entirely out of each other's way. Everything should have been perfect. My life should have drifted by amid silk and the sounds of singing, zithers, flutes, and 2-string fiddles. But lately, something had become deeply strange in my inner residence. It began on the day I summoned Mosu to play the zither. The aloof scholar could normally play 10 pieces without blinking, yet that day, after only half of the phoenix seeks his mate, his fingers began trembling violently. The music shattered into harsh, broken notes that sounded like a crow cawing. I frowned and lifted the gauze curtain to look out. Mosu wore his usual long white silk robe, but his face was deathly pale. Sweat poured from his forehead and dripped onto the instrument. He gasped, clutched his chest, and said, "Princess, cough, cough. I have a terrible headache today. My fingers are cramping. Please allow me to withdraw and rest." Without waiting for my approval, he staggered to his feet and fled the room as though his life depended on it. The frantic way he ran did not resemble a weak and sickly scholar at all. It looked more as though a vicious dog were snapping at his heels. I clicked my tongue. How delicate. The following day, according to the schedule, it was Aya's turn to perform his saber dance. Normally, Aya bounced around like a monkey, swung his blade through the air, and flipped 3 times without breaking a sweat. That day, however, his legs began shaking the moment he entered the courtyard. He carried his crescent saber as though it were a boulder weighing more than 100 pounds. After a single swing, his foot slipped with a thud. The saber flew into the trunk of a peach tree before crashing to the ground. Aya clutched his waist and grimaced. "Ancestor, Aya strained his waist while practicing yesterday. Please forgive me, princess." He spoke between heavy pants, his chest rising and falling like a blacksmith's bellows. The smell of his sweat was mixed with another bitter, strangely familiar odor. I narrowed my eyes. It was exactly like the bitter medicine constantly being brewed in the north courtyard for that sickly ghost, Shen Yu. I peeled a grape and casually tossed it into my mouth. "Leave. Tell the kitchen to stew you a bowl of goji, berry and red date soup to strengthen your waist. You are still so young, yet your health is not even half as good as the new horse I bought." Aya went rigid. Even through the fog that obscured his face, I could sense the immense resentment in the stare he directed at me. But he did not dare say anything. Holding his aching waist, he limped out the door. The matter did not end there. On the third day, my shoulders were sore, so I summoned Nanjing to massage them. Physician Nanjing's skill normally relaxed me until I grew sleepy, but the instant his warm hands touched my shoulders that day, I noticed something was wrong. He was using far too much force. Nanjing was usually gentle. That day, however, his fingers were stiff, pressing into my shoulders as though he meant to use inner power to crush my shoulder blades. Moreover, his hands did not smell of licorice and angelica root. They smelled of expensive agarwood incense. In the entire Grand Princess's residence, the only person who secretly burned that incense to cover the smell of blood was the man waiting to die in the north courtyard. Nanxing, what happened to your hands today? I asked lazily, my eyes still closed. There is a callus between your thumb and forefinger. The person behind me flinched. His hands froze in midair and a cold drop of sweat fell onto my collar. Princess, he answered. Nanxing's voice was hoarser than usual, as though he were forcing it unnaturally low. I have been climbing the mountain to gather herbs lately, and have used a hoe too often, so my hands became calloused. As for the incense, I must have stood too close to the steward's incense burner. He hurriedly withdrew his hands. Princess, I suddenly remembered that I still have medicine simmering on the stove. Please allow me to leave. Another man shot away like the wind. I propped my chin on one hand and watched Nanxing flee past the window as though escaping for his life. His strides were long and powerful, and his light foot technique was exceptional. In the blink of an eye, he vanished behind the rockery. I took a sip of tea. What sort of ridiculous performance were the men in the south courtyard putting on? That afternoon, Chun Tao, my trusted senior maid, carried in a thick stack of ledgers and dropped them onto the table. Princess, it is time to inspect the household accounts for this month. Chun Tao carefully turned the pages. I picked up the South Courtyard's expense ledger, intending to see how much gold and silver those wasteful male favorites had consumed. But after scanning only a few lines, my brows drew tightly together. I pointed at the final sum and tapped my gold nail guard against the tabletop. Chun Tao, explain this to me. We are feeding 8 grown men, each capable of eating through a mountain. Why did the entire South Courtyard spend only 50 taels of silver this month on food, silk, and incense? Are they living on morning mist and dirt? Chun Tao wiped away her sweat and smiled ingratiatingly. Princess, I found it strange as well. But the cook said young Master Gu Ying entered seclusion to practice swordsmanship and ate nothing for 5 days. Shopkeeper Song was so busy with his abacus that he drank only water for 3 days. Young Master Mo Su claimed his stomach was unwell and had not ordered a meal all week. As for Master Fan Yin, he said the Buddha had called him into meditative retreat, and he had not appeared for 10 days. My mouth fell open in astonishment. Retreats and fasting? 8 side rooms, 8 mouths, yet their total expenses equaled exactly 10 days of food for one adult man. I slowly chewed a grape while numbers spun through my head. Had the servants become bold enough to embezzle even the food allowance of my male favorites? Or was I truly an extraordinary genius at managing an inner household, capable of making every coin stretch beyond belief? Of course, I never considered the most absurd possibility, that the noisy South Courtyard, with its 8 personalities and 8 appearances, was actually being performed by one man who changed clothes, painted on scars, sprayed himself with different fragrances, twisted his voice, and then raced from courtyard to courtyard using light foot technique so he could compete for favor against himself. I brushed off my hands and stood. Never mind them. The more they save, the better. Use the money to buy a few more ginseng roots for my husband. He is dying anyway, and if he dies, we will have to pay for a coffin. My heart aches at the expense. At that moment, a muffled thud sounded outside the door. Someone seemed to have been eavesdropping and, upon hearing those words, became so furious that he spat blood and fell from the roof. I was too lazy to investigate. I was merely a blind person who wanted to live the salted, fish life. Autumn arrived early in Shangjing that year. The wind rustled through the parasol trees in the Grand Princess residence. I lay sprawled across a grand wooden chair in the garden, a thin blanket woven with golden thread covering me, and lazily watched several plump carp fight over bits of stamped pastry beneath the water. This life was truly unbearably dull. My boredom was soon shattered by a eunuch's piercing cry. His Majesty has arrived. The young emperor was my own younger brother, whom I had personally carried and raised. With too much idle time on his hands that day, he slipped out of the palace in ordinary clothes and came to my residence. The moment he entered the courtyard, before I could even salute, he waved his sleeve, rushed over in delight and dropped onto the stone seat beside me. His eyes shone like crystal lamps. Imperial elder sister, I heard your inner residence has been especially lively lately. The 8 so-called brothers-in-law in the south courtyard are each said to have their own charms and to be flawless in every way. I am dying of curiosity. I yawned and answered lazily, what is there to be curious about? They are merely men who powder their faces, paint their lips, and cry all day. Noise gives me a headache. My imperial brother refused to let the matter go. He slapped the table. Number I left the palace today specifically to broaden my horizons. Summon all 8 of them. I want to hold a viewing banquet and have them pour wine and compose poetry. I frowned. Summon all 8 at once? Although I owned this residence, I had never called more than 2 male favorites to serve me at the same time. The reason was simple. I was blind. If too many appeared together, I could not tell them apart. If I accidentally called Mosu Ya, one of them might start wailing and threaten to hang himself. It would be unbearably troublesome. They are busy, I said, reaching out to peel a chi as an excuse. Busy with what? Can they be busier than I am reviewing memorials? My brother narrowed his eyes and threatened. Imperial elder sister, if you refuse to summon them, tomorrow I will decree that 10 more be admitted into your residence. I sat up sharply. I already support 8 mouths. If you add 10 more, who will pay for their powder and rouge this month? Fine. Someone, pass down my order. Summon all 8 young masters from the south courtyard to attend the banquet in the garden. Heaven itself could testify that the instant the eunuch called out the order, I vaguely heard pottery shattering in the direction of the north courtyard, followed by Shen Yu coughing, as though he were about to cough up blood. The autumn wind must have chilled him, worsening his tuberculosis again. I clicked my tongue. When I had time, I would order the physician to prescribe a few more doses. If Shen Yu truly died, a coffin carved from precious Nanmu hardwood would cost far too much. About an hour later, the banquet had been arranged. My brother and I sat in the seats of honor. 8 small tables had been placed below us on brocade carpets for the 8 so-called brothers-in-law. Footsteps approached. The first person to enter was Mosu, the aloof scholar. He wore a snow-white robe and walked slowly while carrying a pipalute. For some reason, however, his gait looked unusually stiff that day, like a man who had just been struck in the waist with a club. His face was also pale, and beads of sweat the size of soybeans rolled down his forehead. Greetings to His Majesty. Greetings to the princess. Mosu's voice trembled, and his breath came in broken gasps, as though he had just sprinted from one end of the capital to the other. My brother waved excitedly. No need for ceremony, I heard you play beautifully. Perform a piece for me. Mosu gritted his teeth, hugged the instrument and sat. His fingers had barely plucked a few notes when a dull twang sounded and a string snapped. Mosu's hand stiffened. He suddenly clutched his stomach and folded over like a cooked shrimp. Your Majesty, Princess, forgive me. This afternoon, I must have eaten something spoiled. My stomach feels as though it is being twisted by knives. I cannot hold it any longer. Please excuse me, I need to use the privy. Without waiting for anyone to respond, Mosu seized the pipa and fled for his life. He shot past the rockery with such clean, powerful speed that I nearly mistook him for a martial expert renowned for his light foot technique. I muttered. What is the kitchen doing? Serving spoiled food to my male favorite. Deduct half a month's allowance from the kitchen staff. Fewer than 20 breaths after Mosu vanished, a gust of wind brought a suffocating cloud of powder and perfume. Mingzhu, the flirtatious fox spirit, swayed into view. He wore a thin red robe and carried a jug of grape wine. Princess, Your Majesty. His voice was soft and syrupy, but his breathing was loud and hurried. He staggered and fell against me. I instinctively caught him. Heavens above. His chest burned like a furnace, and sweat had soaked through his inner robe. He collapsed against my shoulder, and his bright red lips accidentally left a faint smear of rouge on my collar. Then, in his panic, he spilled wine all over the table. Oh dear. The maid dressed me in clothes that are far too tight. I can hardly breathe. Mingzhu hiccuped and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Princess, please wait a moment. I will change into something looser and return to serve you immediately. Then he ran too. The red figure shot away like an arrow, dragging a gust behind him that made both candles on the table flicker violently. My brother sat beside me and frowned. Imperial elder sister, are all your male favorites this restless? I calmly ate a grape. They are probably excited to behold the imperial countenance. The banquet continued in an extremely uncanny atmosphere. I narrowed my eyes at the 8 tables. Aside from whichever man was performing before us at the moment, 1 or 2 figures occasionally seemed to be seated in the shadows at the back, yet they behaved very strangely. Nighthawk in black and the plump shopkeeper Song sat as still as statues. Their heads drooped against their chests. They did not eat, drink, move, or even blink when the wind lifted their robes. I decided to test them. Shopkeeper Song, crack a walnut for me. The plump figure in the distance jolted, but he did not dare approach. He merely shook his head with all his might and pointed to his throat, apparently telling me that he had suddenly become mute. How strange. Shopkeeper Song had argued loudly with the steward that very morning, demanding more money for tea. How had he lost his voice by afternoon? I clicked my tongue and was too lazy to think further. At that moment, Fan Yin, the warrior monk from the western regions, entered the hall carrying a long staff. He wore gray monastic robes and his completely shaved head gleamed beneath the moonlight. Without saying a word, Fan Yin went into the courtyard and performed the heaven and earth staff technique for our entertainment. His movements were powerful, and the staff stirred the air with a roaring wind. My brother applauded repeatedly, but halfway through chewing a stamped pastry, I suddenly could not swallow. I might have been face-blind, but I was not brain-blind, and I certainly was not color-blind. Fan Yin turned, and the hem of his gray robe swept upward. I clearly saw a bright red lipstick stain on his collar. The color and shine were exactly the same as the smear Mingzhu had left on my own collar moments earlier. That was not all. After finishing the performance, Fan Yin panted heavily and planted his staff against the ground. My gaze fell to his hands. How peculiar. A warrior monk who gripped a staff year-round should have calluses across his palms and at the bases of his thumbs. Yet Fan Yin's thickest callus was in the web between his thumb and forefinger, the exact callus of a swordsman, identical to the one on Gu Ying's hand. Most unsettling of all, from the time Mo Su ran out, Mingzhu ran in, and Fan Yin began his performance. No matter how much powder, rouge, or pine, soot ink they used, I kept catching a faint trace of familiar agarwood incense beneath the smell of sweat. It was the same high-grade agarwood incense I used to scent Shen Yu as clothes in the north courtyard. My hand paused as I lifted my wine cup. An extremely absurd thought crossed my mind. Could the 8 male favorites I had taken be so underpaid that they secretly exchanged clothes, shared lipstick, and even sneaked into the north courtyard to steal the prince consort's incense? Yes, that had to be it. No wonder the south courtyard's expenses were pitifully low that month. These men truly knew how to save money for the Grand Princess's residence. I nodded inwardly in approval. About 2 hours passed. The young emperor had enjoyed the spectacle, and he finally yawned and prepared to return to the palace. From beginning to end, no more than 2 male favorites had appeared before us at one time, taking turns performing. Of the other 6 places in the shadows, some were left empty because their occupants claimed to be ill, while others were filled by dark figures, sitting motionless like blocks of wood. My brother rose and patted my shoulder. Imperial elder sister, your male favorites are interesting, but their stamina is poor. Each of them performs only 1 round before panting like a dog in summer. You should feed them more meat. I nodded perfunctorily. Fine, fine. Next time, I will give them marrow bones to gnaw. After seeing my brother off, I dismissed every servant, gathered up my skirt, and ambled toward the shadowed corner of the banquet courtyard. I went straight to the plump shopkeeper Song, who was still sitting silently in the darkness. Hey! The banquet is over. You should go back to sleep. I raised my hand and slapped his shoulder. Thud. The plump figure toppled face first onto the ground. My eyes widened. There was no person beneath the bulky robe at all. It was merely a large bundle of straw tied together, dressed in shopkeeper Song's clothing. 2 pillows had been stuffed inside to create a fat belly, and a wooden pole behind it had propped the whole thing upright. I rushed to Nighthawk's table and tore away the black robe. Another identical bundle of straw. This one was even more pitiful. Someone had drawn a pitch black smile on the pillow serving as its head. Heavens and earth! My spine turned cold, and sweat trickled down my back. In the dead of night, with the wind rustling around a lavish banquet, I, the dignified Grand Princess, had spent the evening drinking wine and watching performances beside a collection of straw substitutes. Could the Grand Princess residence truly be haunted? After discovering 3 bundles of straw dressed as guests that night, I was so frightened that I could not sleep for 2 full days. I was the Grand Princess. I had killed people, set fires, and beheaded corrupt officials without so much as blinking. But I was afraid of ghosts. To drive the oppressive ghostly air from my residence, I decided to go out on the night of the Lantern Festival. Going alone, however, would have been far too dull. There was no point considering the sickly Shen Yu in the north courtyard. One gust of wind might send him flying into the top of a parasol tree. I did not dare take him. Su had remained bedridden since his stomachache. Gu Ying was in seclusion. After considering my choices, I summoned the young wolf cub Aya to accompany me. Aya had the most energy in the south courtyard. He was the same age as my younger brother, lively by nature, and constantly clung to me while calling me ancestor. I had also heard that his martial arts were passable. Taking him along as a bodyguard would at least justify the rice he ate. Zouk Street was packed with festival-goers. Aya wore a jade green brocade robe, with his short crescent saber at his waist. He bounced ahead of me, clearing a path. Ancestor, look at this jade, rabbit lantern. Does it resemble me? He turned his head. His eyes seemed to sparkle, and his smile was bright and obedient. Although face blindness reduced his features to a hazy blur, I could never mistake that childish, coaxing tone. I nodded perfunctorily. Yes, it looks exactly like the newborn shaggy puppy in the kitchen. Aya pouted and lowered his eyes in grievance. Even so, his hand faithfully remained extended to shield me so no one in the crowd would jostle against my clothes. He even excitedly took out his own money and bought me a string of candied hawthorn for 10 copper coins. I bit into one of the sugar-coated fruits. It was slightly sour. I gave him only 10 taels of silver in spending money each month. Spending 10 copper coins on candied hawthorn for me could be considered an act of filial respect. The 2 of us ate sweets as we wandered. Without realizing it, the crowd gradually thinned around us. I turned into a narrow alley that served as a shortcut to the riverbank, where people were releasing flower lanterns. We had taken only 10 steps when the night wind suddenly turned icy. The sweet smell of candied hawthorn was overwhelmed by something metallic and foul. Blood. I stopped. More than a dozen black figures silently lifted roof tiles on both sides of the alley and leaped down. Moonlight flashed across their heavy sabers. And a chilling aura pressed toward me. They blocked both ends of the alley, every blade aimed directly at me. I sighed. The Empress Dowager again. Could that old woman not enjoy a meal unless she tried to assassinate me a few times? Raising death warriors cost piles of silver. Did she never ache over the expense? The guards from the Grand Princess's residence had been stopped at the mouth of the alley by another group of black-clad attackers. Inside the narrow lane, only Aya and I remained. Logically, when confronted by more than a dozen fierce assassins, a male favorite, who normally did nothing but act spoiled and coax me into smiling, should have wet himself in terror, screamed, and clung to my leg begging for mercy. I had even prepared to kick Aya aside, pull open my outer robe, and use the concealed weapons hidden against my chest to defend myself. But when the first assassin rushed forward and brought his saber down toward my head, Aya neither cried nor fled. The obedient young man suddenly moved like a hunting leopard. He reached out with astonishing strength, seized me around the waist and flung me behind him. Clang! Aya drew the crescent saber at his hip. With a single parry, he snapped the assassin's heavy blade in 2. The broken metal rang sharply. The assassin cried out as the web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and he stumbled backward several steps. I was so shocked that the candied hawthorn fell from my mouth. What was happening? My Aya possessed such extraordinary martial arts. I paid him only 10 taels a month. How could that salary possibly hire a first-class martial expert? I had suffered a loss. This man had clearly tricked me into signing an outrageously cheap employment contract. Before I could mourn the fallen sweet, the assassins attacked together. Aya held my waist firmly with one arm, pressing me against his chest, while his other hand wielded the crescent saber. He no longer used the graceful, showy techniques meant to entertain me in the south courtyard. Every strike was meant to kill, fierce, ruthless, and decisive. Blood spattered through the alley. A few drops struck the assassin's black masks, but not a single drop reached the hem of my silk skirt. I obediently tucked myself against his chest. At a moment when life and death hung by a thread, my mind began noticing entirely inappropriate details. For example, why were the young Aya's chest muscles as solid as stone? Only a few days earlier, when I had made him dance in a thin silk robe, his figure had still looked slender and youthful. Yet now, as he held me, his chest was broad and steady. His heartbeat remained deep and calm, without a trace of panic. I took a slow breath. Beneath the smell of blood and the sweat of a man fighting for his life, a faint fragrance rose from his collar. It was not the sweet, grassy scent I associated with Aya, nor the smell of sugar. It was the finest royal, grade agarwood, aged through 3 cycles of winter frost. In the entire Grand Princess residence, aside from me, only one person dared use it: Shen Yu, the sickly man in the north courtyard who coughed blood every day. A terrifying idea flashed through my mind: the straw figures at the banquet. The warrior monk's sword callus, a Yas Ugarwood scent. Wait, before I could seize that absurd thought and examine it, another crisis erupted. A death warrior had been crawling across the tiled roof. While Aya dealt with 3 men in front of him, the attacker leaped down behind me. The tip of his sword, coated in green poison, shot toward the back of my neck. Ancestor, be careful. Aya had no time to turn his saber. Instinctively, he spun and used his broad back to shield me while kicking away the assassin before him. The ambusher's blade sliced across Aya's shoulder, tearing his brocade robe and grazing the skin. Pain interrupted his movement for an instant. From the corner of his eye, he saw the attacker stubbornly rise again and lift his blade toward me. At that moment, his perfect disguise finally tore apart. Aya flew into a rage. Fury blazed in his eyes like a wild beast protecting what belonged to it. He stamped against a bluestone slab and shattered it beneath his foot, then roared like thunder. "Anyone who dares touch my wife, get out." His shout carried such profound inner power that my ears rang. The assassin froze in mid-leap, terrified by the force of the roar. The guards from my residence arrived at that instant and cut him down with a slash across the throat. Silence fell over the alley. Bodies lay scattered around us. Yet that silence was not nearly as frightening as the silence between Aya and me. He still held me tightly, one hand locked around my waist. I stood rigid, my wife. In the south courtyard, no matter how favored they were, the male favorites called me only princess or ancestor. There was only one man in the world entitled to call me his wife. And although I was face-blind and saw everyone as a lump of dough, I was not deaf. The voice that had roared just now was not a clear, coaxing voice. It was deep and hoarse, carrying the authority of a man who looked down upon the world. It was Shen Yu's voice. Shen Yu, the man whom my maid had reported about 4 hours earlier, was bedridden in the north courtyard, weakly sipping plain porridge. Shen Yu was Aya. My sickly husband was the young wolf cub from the south courtyard. My lawfully wedded husband had followed me onto the street, called me ancestor, and reluctantly spent 10 of his own copper coins to buy me candied hawthorn. The shock left me dizzy. My entire salted fish worldview shattered into pieces. I lifted my face toward the man holding me. Even the blurred cloud where his features should have been seemed to bead with cold sweat. No, Shen Yu also realized that he had exposed himself. He froze like a badly carved stone statue. His chest rose and fell violently, yet he barely dared to breathe. The awkwardness was so intense that I could have dug a hole through the entire continent with my toes. 5 breaths passed. He slowly lowered his head to look at me and swallowed. Desperately trying to salvage his image, he twisted his voice until it became thin again. Tears gathered in his eyes. Ancestor. Someone just imitated another person's voice and frightened Aya. I was so scared. Boo-hoo! I coldly pushed his arm away from my waist. You still intend to perform at a time like this? Aya was supposed to be an innocent, timid young man, yet he had just cut down more than a dozen attackers without changing expression. Still, he claimed fear had made him accidentally roar, "My wife." I smoothed the wrinkles from my silk skirt, calmly picked up the fallen candied hawthorn, tossed it into the bushes, and said coolly, "Fine. If you are frightened, let us return. Escort me back to the residence." Shen Yu released a breath of relief, believing that he had somehow fooled me, and hurried after me. But he did not know that when I turned and stepped into the carriage, my lips curved into a cold smile. So, he enjoyed acting? The next day, I would summon a senior physician from the Imperial Medical Academy to examine my husband's pulse. I wanted to see how his frail, dying body would conceal the profound inner power that could shatter blue stone slabs and break a heavy saber. After that shocking lantern festival night, I returned calmly to the Grand Princess residence. I did not make a scene or scold the servants. I simply removed the slightly dusty clothes at my leisure, and soaked in a bath filled with rose petals while cracking melon seeds. Chun Tao stood beside the tub, holding a silk towel. Her face was still pale from fear. "Princess, those assassins were outrageous. Fortunately, young Master Aya risked his life to protect you. Tomorrow morning, I will tell the kitchen to stew 3 black, feathered chickens to restore his strength." I spat a melon seed shell into a jade spittoon. "Restore him for what?" "Take my command token and enter the palace immediately. Invite Deputy Director Wang of the Imperial Medical Academy. Tell him I was badly frightened and need my pulse examined and medicine to calm my services." Deputy Director Wang was a plump elderly doctor and the finest physician in Shangjing. He could not bring the dead back to life, but by reading a living person's pulse, he could tell with uncanny accuracy what that person had been doing for the previous 3 days. Chun Tao nodded rapidly and hurried away. I stroked the gold nail guard on my index finger, while imagining the sickly man racing back to the residence, scrubbing off his disguise, changing clothes, spraying himself with agarwood incense, and diving into bed to pretend he had tuberculosis. "Tonight I will let you taste your own medicine." 1 instant stick later, Deputy Director Wang arrived carrying his medicine chest and panting for breath. I sat upright in the grand chair in the main hall, took a sip of ginseng tea, and issued my order clearly. "Deputy Director Wang, assassins frightened me today, and my heart remains unsettled. Coincidentally, many people in my inner residence have been ill lately. Please visit the South Courtyard and examine all 8 of my male favorites. After that, go to the North Courtyard and examine the Prince Consort as well. Do not miss a single person." I placed special emphasis on the command, "Do not miss a single person." Chun Tao immediately led a group of lantern-bearing eunuchs toward the South Courtyard to summon the men. I cracked melon seeds and counted silently, 1, 2, 3. Before I reached 10, Chun Tao ran back drenched in sweat, looking as though she had seen a ghost. Princess, something is terribly wrong. There is no one in the South Courtyard." I raised a brow. "What do you mean no one? Young Master Mosu's side room is locked from the inside." A voice called through the door, saying his stomach hurts, and that he cannot receive visitors. Aya's room is empty. Shopkeeper Song left a note, saying he had gone home to visit his family. The others have vanished as well. The entire South Courtyard is deserted. We shouted until our throats were hoarse, but no one answered. I held back my laughter so fiercely that my insides nearly cramped. How could anyone answer? The only actor responsible for all 8 roles had undoubtedly buried himself in the North Courtyard to prepare for the physician's arrival. He had no cloning technique. Where could he find 8 lives to line up and have their pulses examined? I waved my hand and pretended to be annoyed. A pack of useless men. They all disappear when I need them. Never mind. Take Deputy Director Wang to the North Courtyard and examine the Prince Consort first. My lawfully wedded husband is still the most important. The North Courtyard's door creaked open, and the bitter smell of medicinal herbs rushed into my nose. I entered the bedchamber and approached an old wooden bed. Shen Yu lay beneath a brocade quilt. His face was white as paper, and his lips had no color. He lowered his eyes and coughed repeatedly, looking so fragile that one breath from me might send him flying onto the roof. "Princess, cough, cough. It is already so late, yet you still came to visit me. I fear I might pass my illness to you." His voice was as faint as a strand of spider silk, perfectly suited to a man about to walk the road to the underworld. I smiled warmly and sat on the edge of the bed. Prince Consort, what are you saying? You have been ill for years, and my heart aches for you. Today, I specially invited Deputy Director Wang. Perhaps he knows a new prescription that can cure you completely. Shen Yu stiffened. His gaze flickered, but he had already committed to the performance and had no choice but to continue. Gritting his teeth, he extended a thin arm from beneath the quilt and timidly placed it on the pulse cushion. Deputy Director Wang bent down and set 3 fingers against Shen Yu's wrist. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Cold sweat suddenly poured from the physician's forehead. He narrowed his eyes, then widened them. He switched to the other wrist and examined the pulse again. When he finished, both knees trembled so violently that he nearly dropped to the floor. I gracefully turned the lid of my teacup. Physician, what is wrong with the Prince Consort's pulse? Are his lungs damaged beyond saving? We, Your Highness? Deputy Director Wang wiped his sweat, his voice shaking like an autumn leaf. The Prince Consort's pulse is indeed extremely strange. I have practiced medicine for 30 years and have never encountered a man with tuberculosis whose pulse was so vigorous, or whose inner power surged like waves against a shore. Shen Yu gave a cold, warning cough and glared at him. But Deputy Director Wang was an honest man. Afraid of being accused of deceiving the throne, he dropped to his knees, pressed his forehead to the floor, and blurted out the truth. Although his blood and vital energy are exceptionally strong, the Prince Consort's energy channels are exhausted and disordered. This condition is identical to that of a supreme martial artist who has used light foot technique continuously, running and leaping day and night without rest. He has also repeatedly forced and altered his voice, held his breath, and contorted his body into different postures. He is clearly exhausted and on the verge of collapse. If he continues overworking himself in this manner, tuberculosis will not be what kills him. He may simply stop breathing from exhaustion. Thud. I could almost hear Shen Yu's heart fall to the floor and shatter. I hurled the South Courtyard's expense ledger straight at his face. It landed on the quilt and fell open to the pitifully low figures. I turned and waved. Deputy Director Wang, withdraw. Chun Tao, remove every servant from the North Courtyard and close the doors. Without my order, anyone who takes so much as half a step near this place will have their legs broken. The doors slammed shut. Only the 2 of us remained in the room. Shen Yu lay rigidly on the bed while a deathly atmosphere settled around us. I folded my arms and stared at him coldly. Well then, great martial expert and master performer, explain this to me. I counted on my fingers. Mosu had a stomachache, yet flew over the rockery as lightly as a swallow. Fan Yin is a warrior monk, yet his collar bore Mingzhu's lipstick. Shopkeeper Song was nothing more than straw stuffed with pillows. And Ya was supposed to be an innocent young man. Yet while saving me, he used the Shen family S-18 army, breaking forms. He also called me his wife in the exact hoarse voice of the sickly man lying on this bed. I leaned close to him. Shen Yu, you played 8 people by yourself. You became jealous of your own shadows, performed saber dances, and even argued with yourself in the courtyard. Did you never grow tired? Shen Yu's mask of illness finally tore apart completely. He closed his eyes and gripped the edge of the quilt so hard that blue veins rose across his hand. 5 breaths later, he slowly sat up. He tore away the thin, pale mask covering his face, then crumpled the loose white robe that had made him appear frail. Beneath the sickly disguise stood a tall, powerful man with broad shoulders and the commanding presence of a battle-hardened warrior. He was the dignified heir of the Marquis of Dingyuan, a martial expert whose name frightened people throughout the realm. Yet at that moment he began to cry. Shen Yu did not sob coquettishly. He wept from sheer grievance. He tugged at his hair, pounded the mattress, and complained like a child whose candied hawthorn had been stolen. Do you think I enjoyed this? Do you think pretending to be 8 people was easy? He pointed furiously at the expense ledger. Look at the allowance you give the South Courtyard each month. 50 taels for 8 people. Do you know how expensive the pearl powder is when I disguise myself as Mosu? 10 taels for 1 box. He rolled up his sleeves and showed me the bruises on his arms. I am a dignified man, yet to play shopkeeper song, I had to strap a belly stuffed with cotton around myself and waddle everywhere. To play Nighthawk, I had to hang upside down from the roof beams and endure mosquitoes for 6 full hours. When you summoned Aya to perform with a saber, I had to finish the dance and sprint back to the north courtyard, change into monastic robes, and return to perform with a staff as Fan Yin. At night, I even went into the rear courtyard and pretended to quarrel and fight with myself, so you would believe your inner residence was competing for favor. Shen Yu pushed his tangled hair back. His eyes were red with resentment. The allowance you gave me was not enough to buy the disguise supplies. I even spent my entire court salary on pain relief ointment for the backache caused by racing between the courtyards with light foot technique. My secret guards have become depressed because they spend every day hugging straw and making scarecrows. He drew a sharp breath, threw the quilt aside and sprang to his feet. Enough. I quit. I am not doing this anymore. Drive me away or beat me if you wish. I would rather fight 300 rounds at the frontier than remain at home, following a schedule and rushing between roles to serve you. After saying that, he folded his arms, dropped onto the edge of the bed, and turned his face away. His wet eyes and broad back radiated absolute grievance. Stood rooted to the spot, watching my husband finally explode and pour out every grievance. My mind was a complete mess. So the reason my noisy inner court had always maintained such perfectly low expenses was not because I possessed extraordinary management skills. It was because this fool had been paying out of his own pocket to operate the entire place by himself. I, supposedly the legendary scoundrel of a woman with an entire harem, had turned out to be nothing more than the audience of one hopelessly devoted fool. I lowered my head and looked at Shen Yu's reddened eyes. All the anger I had felt over being deceived suddenly vanished. A laugh escaped me. The clear sound rang through the silent room, and it was so infuriatingly cheerful that Shen Yu turned to stare at me in disbelief. I laughed until the ornaments in my hair trembled and I nearly choked. Holding my stomach, I bent over the side of the bed and gasped for breath. Shen Yu sat curled in a miserable heap, his phoenix-shaped eyes red from grievance. When he saw me laughing like a madwoman, his eyes widened. He dragged the brocade quilt up to his neck, hiding his powerful chest like a sheltered maiden who had been teased by bandits, and gritted his teeth. Li Pingyang, I put so much thought into this for you. By day, I pretended to be dying of tuberculosis. By night I became a thief and flew over walls. It is bad enough that you are not moved, but now you sit there laughing. Has a dog eaten your conscience? I pulled out a silk handkerchief and wiped away the tear that had formed at the corner of my eye. Wait. Let me laugh a little longer. This is too absurd. I need time to understand it. I took a deep breath and tried to rebuild the worldview that had just been kicked to pieces. Then I examined Shen Yu from head to toe. He was the imposing heir of the Marquis of Dingyuan, a man whose name stopped children in Shangjing from crying at night. Yet when no one was watching, he was also a fragile scholar with constant stomachaches, a flirtatious fox spirit who wore red and painted his lips, and a bald warrior monk from the western regions who performed with a staff. I moved closer and lightly kicked the enormous ironwood chest hidden beneath the bed. What is inside this? Pull it out and let me broaden my horizons. Shen Yu snorted coldly and climbed down from the bed. Still sulking, he opened the chest. I leaned over to look and nearly burst into laughter again. The chest, which was nearly half the size of the bed, contained an astonishing professional disguise kit. There were stacks of thin masks carefully made from processed pigskin, clothes in every color, Mosu's elegant white silk, Mingzhu's thin red robes, Fan Yin's dull gray monastic garment, and Nighthawk's completely black outfit. Most striking of all was an enormous cotton, stuffed pillow stained with sweat. Shen Yu picked it up, slammed it onto the floor, and pointed at it while recounting his suffering. Look, this is Shopkeeper Song's fake belly. During the blazing heat of the 6th lunar month, you summoned Shopkeeper Song to click his abacus for you. I had to strap this pillow around my stomach until heat rash covered my entire waist. Touch it. My skin is still rough. I suppressed my laughter and nodded solemnly. You have suffered greatly, my lord. He picked up a smooth leather cap. And this? You enjoy watching a warrior monk perform with a staff, do you not? My hair is this long. Every time you summoned Fan Yin, I had to flatten it with pig fat and pull this fake bald cap over my head. It was so hot that my insides boiled. Grease ran into my eyes and burned them. Yet I still had to appear profound and unfathomable. Do you think any of this was easy? He picked up each object and threw it onto the floor, complaining with the bitter energy of a neglected wife reporting household expenses to her mother-in-law. I lazily crossed my legs and took a slow sip of warm tea. Only after he had exhausted his anger and thrown down a pouch of cheap pearl powder did I speak. Shen Yu, you truly are an idiot. He stopped. Turning toward me, he looked confused and faintly wounded. I rose, walked slowly to him, and smoothed the loose hair from his forehead. You are a powerful military commander with rank and authority. Why lower yourself to perform this ridiculous show merely to amuse me? The Empress Dowager forced you into this residence. If you disliked it, you could simply have kept up the sickly act. I would never have forced you to attend my bedchamber. At those words, Shen Yu's broad shoulders lowered slightly. He remained silent for one breath. When he spoke again, the grievance had left his deep, hoarse voice. Only stubborn bitterness remained. Because you did not care about me? He looked up. His gaze felt so intense that it seemed capable of piercing the fog of my face blindness. You married me, but you treated me as a dying man who existed only to fool the world. You said you liked beautiful men and wanted to take male favorites. How could I allow strangers of unknown origin to approach you? The Empress Dowager, the Chancellor, the 6 ministries, countless eyes outside were waiting to plant spies in the Grand Princess's residence and send them into your bedchamber to search for a weakness. Shen Yu caught my wrist. His fingers were rough but extremely warm. If the 8 places in your south courtyard were already filled, and all 8 were me, no one else would ever have the chance to enter this residence. I would rather paint my face every day and run until my legs broke between 8 side rooms than watch you hold another man. That domineering yet helpless confession hit me with full force. I blinked in a daze. My mind did not fill with the tender romance of a love story. Instead, as a devoted believer in the salted fish philosophy, I calculated the situation from an extremely practical angle. So that was the truth. I had believed I was a legendary scoundrel of a woman who had gathered an entire harem of irresistible men. In reality, the whole thing was a play written, directed, and performed by my wife, obsessed husband. But after careful thought, this arrangement brought me nothing but benefits. First, it saved the Grand Princess's residence an extraordinary amount of money. One person drew a single salary while performing 8 jobs. Every financial manager dreamed of such an employee. Second, I was blind. Looking at people was like looking at pieces of wood. Keeping a crowd of men bouncing around the residence would be noisy and exhausting. If Shen Yu handled all 8 roles, I would never fear calling someone by the wrong name or worry about jealous fights disfiguring anyone's face. He was already busy fighting with his own shadows. 1 investment, 8 returns. This bargain was far too profitable. Once understood that, my mood brightened like flowers opening in spring. I cleared my throat, waved my sleeve with great ceremony, and turned toward the daybed. Ahem. I understand what you have said. Since I am blind, maintaining 8 identities is indeed troublesome. Moreover, making you pay for the cosmetics yourself month after month leaves me somewhat guilty. Shen Yu's phoenix-shaped eyes immediately lit like torches. I have made an important decision. Tomorrow morning, I will announce that the Grand Princess has recently cultivated her mind, grown tired of male beauty, and expelled all 8 male favorites from the South Courtyard to their hometowns. From this day forward, the Grand Princess's residence will have only 1 male master. Shen Yu sprang to his feet. His tuberculosis act disappeared completely. His face shone with joy, and he rushed toward me as though intending to lift me into the air and spin me 3 times. My wife, my dearest ancestor, you finally understand my heart. I knew you loved me most. Tonight, I can finally enter your private courtyard openly and spend the night in your bedchamber as your lawful husband. Wait. I calmly raised 1 finger in its bright gold nail guard and pressed it against his forehead, preventing him from wrapping his arms around my waist. Shen Yu stopped and looked at me blankly. What is it? Have you changed your mind about driving them away? I lazily picked up a grape, peeled it, and smiled with extreme cunning. I will still drive them away. That will save money on rice. However, I pointed at the chest and the clothes scattered across the floor. Lately, I have found Mosua's music very pleasant. Physician Nanxing's massage yesterday also used exactly the right amount of pressure, and the sulking expression of the fox spirit Mingzhu, with tears in his eyes, was quite entertaining. Shen Yu blinked. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He swallowed, sensing disaster. I lifted my chin, narrowed my eyes, and tapped my nail against the table. Tonight, put on the white silk and wash your hands in pine, soot ink water. I want to hear Mo Su play The Phoenix Seeks His Mate before I sleep. If you miss a single note, I will make you wear the fake bald cap and perform with a staff in the courtyard until dawn. Shen Yu looked utterly devastated. The joyful atmosphere that had barely begun was crushed beneath the heel of my embroidered shoe. The mighty heir of the Marquise of Dingyuan, who had just plotted to overthrow my entire inner court and become its sole master, fell into a new pit of despair. He looked at me with trembling disbelief, the corner of his eye twitching repeatedly. At last, he accepted his fate. With deep resentment, he bent down, picked up the delicate white silk robe, draped it over his shoulder, and staggered toward the folding screen to change. A desolate sigh echoed through the night. My ancestor, please have mercy on my back. News that I had dissolved the south courtyard and sent all 8 male favorites home spread across Shangjing overnight. The people talked excitedly, saying that the Grand Princess had finally cleansed her heart, changed her ways, and returned to the proper path. But the Empress Dowager never wanted me to live peacefully. When she heard the news, she immediately became restless. She believed that I had fallen out with my favorites and saw a perfect opportunity to insert another spy into my residence. At noon the following day, an imperial decree arrived. The Empress Dowager pitied the loneliness of the Grand Princess's residence and specially bestowed upon me a real, flesh and blood handsome man named Lu Yan. According to Chun Tao's enthusiastic gossip, Lu Yan was the finest beauty under heaven. He had long, upturned phoenix-shaped eyes, elegant brows, a narrow waist, long legs, and the fragile grace of a willow branch trembling in the wind. It was said that when he cried, flowers lost their color and moonlight paled, making anyone who saw him ache with pity. But to someone with face blindness, the finest beauty beneath the heavens and a radish from the market were both merely moving clouds of fog. I yawned and waved to the servants. Put him in an empty side room in the west courtyard. The residence is limiting expenses this month. 2 vegetarian meals a day will be enough. 1 more mouth meant more rice. The thought pained me. But if the thought pained me, the man in the north courtyard felt it far more keenly. Shen Yu's chronic tuberculosis vanished completely within half an incense stick. The next morning, Lu Yan entered the main hall with graceful steps to greet me. At that exact moment, an earth-shaking crash erupted from the north courtyard. A thick ironwood door was kicked apart, and the broken halves flew across the courtyard. I was halfway through a piece of osmanthus cake and stared outside with wide eyes. Shen Yu had abandoned his pale, sickly white robes. That day, he wore an imposing black and gold robe embroidered with silver thread and black boots, and carried the heavy star, cleaver sword, which weighed 100 jin, roughly 110 pounds. A murderous aura rolled off him, like a vengeful demon, come to claim a life as he strode into the main hall. At that moment, Lu Yan was kneeling before me, holding up a cup of tea with both hands and tears in his eyes. Princess, I heard that the prince's consort body is ruined and that years of tuberculosis have left him unable to care for you. During the long and lonely nights, allow me to massage your shoulders and ease your solitude. His voice was soft, delicate, and dripping with sweetness. Shen Yu stepped across the threshold just in time to hear him. The veins on his forehead throbbed. He gave a cold laugh and drove his heavy sword into the floor. The blade punched a hole in the blue-gray brick floor, nearly as wide as a cat's food bowl. This weak, willow act and pitiful expression, I exhausted that performance while playing Physician Nanxing and the fox spirit Mingzhu. Are you showing off before an expert? Lu Yan's expression changed. He was a death warrior sent by the Empress Dowager. He had planned to use his beauty to approach me and poison the tea. Realizing that Shen Yu had exposed him, he drew a short blade hidden in his sleeve and lunged toward my throat. I stepped back, while still holding my plate of osmanthus cakes. Before I could call the guards, a black and gold shadow flashed in front of me. Shen Yu kicked once. There was no elaborate technique and no glittering sword light, only the overwhelming strength of a man driven mad by jealousy. The kick struck Lu Yan in the chest and sent him flying across the courtyard like a kite with a broken string. He flew nearly 10 meters across the courtyard, passed over the courtyard wall, and plunged headfirst into the lotus pond outside the residence with a splash. He immediately began foaming at the mouth without even managing a gasp. The entire courtyard fell silent. The maids were so frightened that they dropped their brooms and stood speechless. Shen Yu turned, swept his robe aside, and strode toward me. At that moment, he looked proud and formidable, without the slightest trace of his former sickly appearance. I blinked and swallowed the rest of my cake. He braced both hands against the arms of my chair and leaned down until his face was so close that I could smell blazing agarwood in his breath. He ground out each word loudly enough for the entire residence to hear. Li Pingyang, listen carefully. From today onward, neither dogs nor male strangers may enter the Grand Princess residence. Whatever performance you want to see, I will perform it. Whatever appearance you like, I will endure the disguise. If you want sword dancing or music, I will do everything. He paused. The corners of his eyes reddened fiercely. But if anyone drags himself into this residence to compete with me for favor, I will cut off his legs. You are mine, mine alone. His declaration of possession made my ears ring. Looking at the tips of his ears, which had turned red with agitation, I could not resist reaching up and pinching one. Why are you shouting? I am face. Blind, not deaf. I clicked my tongue and stretched lazily. Fine. We will not accept strangers anymore. It was difficult enough to balance the household accounts. 8 rolls cost only 50 taels a month. Taking this man would waste food and invite trouble. It would be a terrible loss. Shen Yu froze. His towering fury and murderous aura instantly disappeared. He released a breath as though an enormous boulder had been lifted from his chest, and his phoenix-shaped eyes curved with delight. In the next instant, the blood-stained general obediently lowered his head onto my shoulder. He rubbed his hair against my neck and switched smoothly into a youthful tone. Ancestor, I used too much strength kicking that man. My waist hurts. Massage it. For me. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. I slapped his back once. Enough. Stop acting. Tonight, do you want ginseng chicken stew or roast duck? You, he answered with a grin. Then he lifted me into his arms and strode toward my private courtyard, ignoring the servants staring open-mouthed behind us. From that day onward, no one in Shangjing dared send another man to the Grand Princess residence. Everyone claimed the prince consort had been possessed. A man once dying of tuberculosis had suddenly transformed into a war god, guarding his wife and kicking away every rival. Peace returned to the residence. The household expenses remained at the absolute minimum every month, which pleased me greatly. Only occasionally, on nights of clear moonlight and gentle breezes, I would lie on the bed, cracking melon seeds and yawning from boredom. Shen Yu would understand immediately. He would drag the enormous chest from beneath the bed, take out Nighthawk's black outfit and a fake short saber, and swing himself onto the roof beam. Looking down from the corner of his eye, he would lower his voice and say, Master, shall Nighthawk attend you while you sleep tonight? I would laugh so hard that I choked on a melon seed. In this life, marrying a husband who split himself into 8 jealous identities had turned out to be the greatest bargain I had ever made.